Welcome to Eris Talks, everyone. So every Monday and Wednesday, I sit down with someone I find interesting and unique and highlight their story and try to find out more about them. So I'll introduce myself first. I'm Aristocracy. I'm a history streamer. I love learning and engaging with ideas, both based and crazy, but with honesty and charity. I'm also the founder of Discord's biggest brain server, Calliope Club. And today we have Vaush. I think you're the head of BreadTube. That's what I heard last. And a notorious YouTube socialist. Do you want to give us a summary of what you do online?
Yeah, it's an ongoing civil war. There's no permanent leader, but I guess for now I'll take that. I'll take that title. Yeah, I'm a political live streamer. I guess I play games from time to time too. I'm a libertarian socialist. I don't know. I like the space. So yeah, happy to be here.
Cool. Let me just get my camera set up there. Now that looks right.
A professional Bloodborne streamer as well.
Bloodborne streamer, like the game?
Yeah, I was the first person to beat Bloodborne.
No way. I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they thought it was
impossible. Is that a really hard game?
Yeah, it's super hard. It took people 6 years to beat it.
Do you find your views go down when you play video games? Because like my views just completely drop.
Yeah, I get fewer views during the video games. That's cool though. It's like breathing, okay? Doing the politics streams is like a big inhale. You get everyone in, you know, it's very vital, but you got to exhale. And if I didn't have video game streams, I would keep inhaling until
You would just go crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's how you like suck people in, you know? With the politics, and then they stay around for the games.
Yeah, my goal is to convert productive socialists to unproductive gamers, and so far so good, I think.
That's actually a really problematic goal. I feel like that someone deserves to be canceled. That's a really bad thing to do.
Hey, as long as I'm turning people on to the glory of Bloodborne, you know, no big.
I haven't actually played Bloodborne yet, but I might actually try. I heard it's really hard.
It's that I struggled with it more than I did any other From Software game. Sekiro, the Dark Souls trio, I found easier than Bloodborne. But I bet now that I've beaten Bloodborne, I could go back through it again and just effortlessly breeze through every challenge. It's one of those games that really takes a little bit of cognitive reformatting. But after you get that done, I think that you've pretty much mastered it. You know.
That's cool. Maybe I'll give it a try. If by the way, if you guys want to get your questions in, be sure to come to my stream chat and put them in there. I'll do my best to incorporate them. I also want to give a content warning. We will be talking about some challenging issues like sexual harassment, controversial subjects, like all of that stuff. So if that stuff might upset you, probably best to tune out. And also, Vaush, basically tell me a bit about your upbringing. I don't know if you talk about it a lot on stream, but that's what I'm really curious about. Like, what were the specific like challenges that you had with that?
I didn't have many challenges with my upbringing. That's the
No
thing.
way.
I grew up in Beverly
you.
Hills. Not like crazy wealthy family, but like good, like solid, you know, like very steady. With two excellent parents, and I went to a phenomenal, you know, set of schools. It's really difficult for me to complain about anything to my upbringing, you know. If there were any troubles that I had with my upbringing, it's that I'm autistic, and I got better at managing that the older that I got. But earlier on, you know, I was a little more. What would you say? Is it ableist for me to say obnoxious? I was a little more obnoxious, ye back, and I had to work through that. But past that, structurally, it was all pretty well and good. I really don't have anything to complain about.
But then what are you going to use as an excuse when you get caught doing something really bad? That's always like my go-to.
The funny thing is, I feel like a lot of online content creators have rags to riches stories because there's something very democratizing about success online. It's not like owning a bank branch, you know, like you don't need to come from old money to be big online. Pretty much anyone can do it, though obviously having an affinity for technology and a familiarity with internet culture, which is associated with higher income brackets, that helps, but it's still more, you know, more spread out, I think, in terms of the backgrounds of the types of people on here than others. There are a lot of people who have succeeded in spite of challenges they faced early on, and sometimes I look at what they've done and I wonder, if I was put in their situation, would I have been able to do this? And I think, honestly, the answer in many cases is no. I've been extraordinarily lucky. I can't complain about that.
Well, it takes a lot of time. Like people just assume that streaming and doing all this content creation, it's just the hours that they see live. But there's like so much work that just goes behind closed doors that people don't. And not everyone has the time to be able to take that risk as well.
Oh, sure, yeah. I do a lot of work. Well, the work that I've had to do is scaled proportionally to my size. Early on, the work that I did was more like scouting. It's a bold new industry, and there aren't that many left-leaning streamers, who do political stuff. So
Yeah.
early on, it was about connections and trying to see which types of behavior do X or Y. And there aren't that many guides, by the way, for getting started with streaming, and a lot of them have contradictory information. Sometimes you'll get recommended brands of technology that don't work very well for streaming, or there will be extenuating circumstances that won't be accounted for. You have to figure a
Mhm.
lot of stuff out. And then there's like controlling your community, and it's actually quite a bit to dump on somebody's lap. I think the hardest learning curve comes with the agonizing terror of being known. A lot of people aren't cut out for being under constant public scrutiny.
Yep. I actually do want to get to that part. That's like a whole section of the interview that I want to
I
talk about
foreshadowed it. There you
later
go.
on. Yeah, like because I'm facing those weird challenges. Like I'm like a brand new streamer and starting to get to, so I want to get some advice from you in relation to that. But all right, so I was actually really surprised to find out because I've been doing like research. I was trying to do some prep for the stream, and you made it really easy with that YouTube video that you did.
Everything I've
But
been canceled for?
yeah, that was a great video. Um, and but something that I found out about you, like, and I mean, I'm sure your fans are all know this already,
Mhm.
but that you came originally from Destiny's community, which was just for someone who's new to this world. I just thought that was so crazy. Like, what an origin story.
Yeah, well,
Um,
nowadays, if I do this long enough, I'm going to start telling people that he came from my community. Most people won't bother to look it up. So eventually I'll sell people on that. But yeah, I was a prominent chatter in his community for God years. Like I think going back at least 6 years from now, or maybe 5, but I've been watching him even prior to that. And I was like a kind of annoying, but nonetheless right, correct, a feminist
oh, of course.
mostly. And he had more like libertarian gamer dude bro takes, so we would argue over that. And eventually I guess he moved more over to the left, more over to my side, and then I moved over to the left too, so we ended up being equidistant. But I was liked enough in his community that some people there, they encouraged me to oh, actually, the specific story is this, because people had been saying start a stream, start a stream, start a stream, but I knew how hard streaming was because I'd been watching Destiny
Yeah.
for a while. I know there's a lot of back end stuff. I know it's complicated. But at one point, this up and coming streamer, this GTA 5 newcomer named Hassan Piker, he saw, this is back when he was friends with Destiny, he saw an old
Mhm.
video of me arguing with Destiny, like years old, and he thought, oh, this guy's cool, this Irish laddie guy, which was my name back then. So
Mhm.
he was like, hey, can we have this guy on? I came on the stream, and for some reason, I don't remember the context, but H Bomber guy was also there. I don't know why both of those things happened at once, but I ended talking to both of them. And afterwards, there was a lot of public support for me to start a stream. And Hassan, of course, is a less left-leaning community, and so they pushed me towards that. And I started, and since then, things have gone pretty well. The initial jump in viewership, I can absolutely and unquestionably attribute to my familiarity in those social circles to begin with.
Mhm.
You need that early jump. It's incredibly important. But as time has gone on, our circles have drifted farther apart, which is probably best for everyone.
Has that been hard at all? Because I've noticed just as I've gone into streaming, there's also been, I don't know, like growing pains, like challenges associated with that. And has that been hard for you, like to potentially lose some of those friendships or those connections over time?
Not especially. I'm a you probably heard something of a controversial online figure. At this point, I just assume that we're not making friends with anybody, and all relationships or bonds are temporary. So while initially that was a bit of an issue, at this point does it sound like edgy anime like bullshit to say I'm numb to it? I just at this point I've tried to avoid um taking anything for granted in that regard.
No, it's not edgy. I feel like it's just a normal coping mechanism when something happens to you over and over
I'm like
again. Just
Sasuke, from Naruto.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm numb to the
Okay,
pain.
I don't want your chat to kill me, but I actually have not watched anime, even though I'm a VTuber.
You're
No,
you're a
I know.
VTuber. You
No,
haven't
I'm a total
watched.
poser.
Okay. All right. Well,
Okay.
looks like two people are getting canceled in this conversation. All right.
But yeah, my chat's trying to encourage me to get into it. I might try some. I heard there's some good like anime history stuff, like historical stuff. So I
Yeah, I mean,
might
it's
get into
also
that.
it's the root of like a solid quarter of all internet culture, so it's probably good to get into. You can go online and you can find the planner to help you avoid filler arcs because the filler arcs are a killer in the anime. But if you skip past, I think I haven't watched Shippuden, but the base Naruto I think is very solid story.
Well, I had to like delve into the whole anime world when I was designing my avatar because I wanted to know what the aesthetics were in that world, what was weird, what was dated, what was normal, um and it was just so overwhelming. Like I was like these avatars. That's why my avatar looks so plain compared to all the other VTubers because I was like I can't handle all the bows and the weird sticks and the witches. It's too much.
That's okay. I think that a lot of the excessive wardrobe is a product of like design overcompensation. I think it's gotten worse with time. There are a lot of really iconic, especially female character designs from anime in the 80s and 90s that I remember vividly, in spite of the fact that it was
Hmm.
usually just a simple outfit, hair, and an expression. But nowadays it feels like because everyone has to stick out. You're slapping like 80 things on every character, and I think a lot of that is because many studios are unwilling to move away from like the default anime face because it's tried,
Yeah.
true, tested, and there are a lot of art tools that allow it to be drawn very effectively and easily.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. Um, I kind of want to get into back into the Dusty stuff. So um how did you go from just people telling you to start streaming versus you actually being like, okay, I'm actually going to try this out. Like
Well,
I'm actually going to do it.
I didn't have much money at the time because I had just graduated from university and I was having a lot of trouble finding a job. I was up in Humboldt State University up in the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, which is, by the way, a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. Maybe the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. There was a hiking trail that ran through my university. You take a right, you go to the cafeteria. You take a left, you go into the forest. And the trees there, 80, 90, 100 feet
I
tall.
love Forest so much.
There's nothing like it. I'm serious. The redwoods, there is nothing like it. That's the only place in the world that's like that. And anyway, unfortunately, for reasons I just described, um the industry in that part of the world used to be primarily logging and fishing, but now the redwoods are protected, and due to industrial pollutants the fish are not biting as much. So that area of the Pacific Northwest, Humboldt County, is dying economically.
So
It's kept
sad.
Yeah, it's kept alive by university students coming in with mommy and daddy money, which I contributed to at least a little bit. But in terms of new jobs, not so much. Not at the moment. I searched for 6 months trying to find a job. I even signed up with one of those humiliating employment assistance services where you go there and you give them your resume and you tell them that you would like to make slightly above starvation wages, and they tut and they say, we can get you starvation wages. And then you leave, and then you hear back from them 3 weeks later, and they're like, "You could be cleaning shit out of gutters with your own tongue. You want to start there? Like that kind of thing." And I never got any hits from that either, and I didn't have a car, and everything was so spread out, and I just could not find a place to work. So I didn't have money
Mm.
to buy anything that I would need to start streaming. But I was mentioning this, I think, on a Destiny's subreddit, and this guy, I think they were called like Omnic One or something, um, said, "Hey, if that's the only thing stopping you from getting started, I can just buy you a microphone. I'll buy you a Logitech or like a Panasonic, the blue microphone, like the very standard
Yeah.
starter mic." And I thought, oh my God, wait, real? And the son of a bitch actually did it. Sent me a mic. And if it weren't for that, I wouldn't be here
Yeah.
today. And I wouldn't be wealthy and I wouldn't have fans and blah, blah. the Blue Yeti mic. That thing sent on over, wrapped up, you know, in the
Yeah, that's everyone's first mic, right?
yeah, the bubble wrap they sent it in. I still have it, though it's slightly dented because of Artemy, whatever. But anyway, I got started because of that, and I was able to stream for about a week before somebody donated $50. Said, "Hey, why don't you get a camera?" Bought the cheapest camera I could find. If you've seen my earliest streams, you'll see that. You'll see the
Yeah.
money in action. And that's when it really kicked off. And since then, once I had a mic and a camera, I already had a laptop, and my laptop was just barely strong enough. I mean, just strong enough.
You were streaming from a laptop?
Yeah, it was I think a 2017 gaming laptop. It was just
Wow.
barely capable of keeping it together while streaming. And of course, I didn't have two monitors, so I had chat on my phone. And I would prop my phone up on top of a stack of erasers right in front of me. I had my cam to my left side because it couldn't be in front of me because that would catch all the crap we had stored in our tiny apartment behind me. So it was on the side. And I would just look down, chat, and do the whole thing. And honestly, the format of my stream has stayed mostly the same since then. Obviously, the camera's in a slightly better place. I have a lighting setup now, and my microphone is significantly better. But apart from that, it's basically the gist.
I admire you for the honesty, saying that the thing that really got you to do it was money. Because I feel like there's just people are so worried. Like I see so many posts on the Twitch subreddit and stuff where people are like, "Oh, don't get into streaming like for money. You have to get into it for the right reasons." But it's like you've got to be in a really uniquely privileged situation, like where you can spend all that time and not be able to put not like and you're not getting anything to be able to put food on your table.
Well, I wanted to stream anyway. I was the
Yeah.
idea of being a streamer is something that I had idolized for a long time. Anybody who's watched me can probably tell. But obviously, if I'm going to do that, I need to be compensated for my work. Because otherwise, I was
Hmm.
spending all my day job hunting. It's A or B. I have to. Something has to be paying for the groceries. And I could hit up my parents more. That's entirely possible. And if it had come down to it, I probably would have had to have moved back to Beverly Hills and gotten some minimum wage job in the neighborhood and blah, blah, blah. But thankfully, it didn't come to that. Within probably a couple months of financial self-destruction, I was able to get that initial investment. I just wasn't willing to spend $150 on the mic myself because that was a long shot. I mean, making it as a streamer and making it profitable fast enough for me to not have to move back in with my parents, that was a minimal shot, like very, very, at $150, that's like 4 weeks of groceries if you look for sales and eat a lot of rice and beans. Oh, no way.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that things ended up working out.
That's awesome. Chad Logic, thank you so much for that raid, by the way. You guys should check him out. Really great streamer. Also, I don't know if technically a VTuber, but doesn't have his camera on. So actually, speaking of that, have you ever thought of creating like a VTube character now that it's so trendy?
I've thought about it a little bit, yeah. I've thought about it. I mean, wouldn't the easy one just be for me to get Conti from Fully Cooley or something like that? You know, like just the
Yeah.
TV head. I don't know how far I can push that logo before we start to run into copyright issues. But yeah, I feel like we could do something cute there. Or Vaush Field, my Garfield persona. That's also an option.
That would actually be really cool.
Yeah.
So back to Destiny, this might be weird to say, but would you consider him like a competitor?
No,
Or is that
I
like the
can't.
wrong word to use?
I can't, in fairness, say that because if he's a competitor, he is the existence of his community has been unbelievably charitable to mine. At this point, I don't think we fight over the same audience because we've he has very much stopped flirting with the left, and all I do is flirt with the left. I fuck with the left. So we definitely pull in different directions now. And I think that calling him a competitor would kind of downplay the extent to which I was reliant on support from his community to begin with. So I don't want to appear in that respect like ungrateful or lacking in introspection. We definitely are the only two people of our size who do this thing. And maybe as more people broach into this space at our size, they can be competitors with me or us or both of us. But yeah, at the moment, I don't really see him as a competitor.
Yeah, I admire that. Like, I think that that's a good thing to remember, like where we all start from and stuff. Like, I see some streamers prop up other people, and then when they get big, they just completely forget about that. And yeah, that kind of sucks.
I try to help
Um,
people to, pay it down a
I
little
mean, we're
bit.
doing this interview right now, and I'm like tiny compared to you.
Sure, but I'm doing because I'm having fun. I like talking about me. But no, okay. But
We all
but
do.
I do think that it's nice. I don't know if I would say it's a responsibility. I do think it's nice to try to help out small people with a lot of potential in a given field. There's a person called Echo Gecko. They're not a streamer. They just make YouTube videos about environmentalism and urban development. And their YouTube videos are just spectacular, some of the best stuff that I've seen in the field. I mean, we're talking, you can watch an hour of this, I feel like get a university course worth of information. Of course, no YouTube video can fully compensate for the experience of academia, but I feel like you're really getting good info. I mean, good, solid, well-researched information. So I spent some time
Yeah.
shouting them out because, I don't know, it's just, I would like it if I could look to my left and my right and see people at my level who I respected and not constantly hate the masses of the online left, which is unfortunately the position that I am in currently.
Yeah, I think you and I, like, we've talked before, I think on the platforming debate, that we have like some of the same criticisms, and we've been both somewhat victimized by that. I'm sure there have been some legit criticisms too for both of us, but yeah. We'll get into that, I guess, in a bit. But um I guess, so what do you think are like the main differences between you and Destiny?
Um, well, so there are three big ones. The first one obviously is political alignment. We both sometimes Destiny says that he doesn't have a political agenda and he merely likes to arrive at like factual information for his own benefit. I don't think anybody is
Mhm.
fully like that. Everybody has preferences for the world and how they want to see the world be, and we have
Yeah.
different preferences. Obviously, I'm more interested in structural critiques that go outside the range of systems that are, let's say, immediately electorally available. Though I think in most respects, I'm probably way more concerned with pragmatism than almost anybody else on the online left. Um, the second big one is that stream format. Destiny will stream 10 hours a day, and most of it, and this isn't a disrespect thing, most of it will be like just chill video game playing or like just talking with
Mhm.
friends or whatever. And Hassan does the same thing. It's like this lifestyle streaming. I do not know how people do that. I am terribly sorry. I genuinely do not. I have no idea. I could not imagine. What I try to treat my streams like is stand-up comedy. When I start a stream, I have a certain energy level. I know I'm going to deplete it by streaming. Much as I love streaming, I know I will deplete it. And I try
Yeah.
to carry the stream forward, beat by beat, make sure there's always a high level of energy. This point leads into that point, leads into this point. I prefer that. I think it
That's
keeps
exactly what I do too.
Yeah, I think it keeps energy
Yeah.
levels high. It definitely keeps viewer counts relatively high. I'm very happy that on good days, even without like breaking news events, I can get 12 or 13,000 viewers for like a brief stream just talking about what's going on or giving my thoughts on something. In an off season too, where we don't even have upcoming elections. I'm very happy about that. So I'm happy with my format. Though there are obviously downsides. Like I don't have an orbiter community. I don't have like a collection of friends around me who can come on to supplement my content. Now, I could bring people on. It's just not something that I do. It's not a format type that I embrace.
Hmm.
And obviously, the third, final, and most important difference is height. I am 3 feet taller than Destiny. This has many ramifications broadly in the way our
Three
content
feet.
goes.
Okay. As a short person, I'm a little offended, but it's okay. We can move on.
Wait, I didn't
We'll get.
assign any
We'll bring.
moral. I didn't assign any moral worth to that dichotomy. Are you assuming that I think it's wrong to be short?
Well, I am a more moral realist, right? Are you a moralist? You're a relativist?
The more convincing arguments that I have heard are moral anti-realist, but I don't know if I would call
Oh
myself a
no.
relativist.
God, I want to get into that debate with you, but I would totally fail moral realism because I am not. I did my minor in philosophy in undergrad, and yeah, it's been a
Then you're
while.
significantly
So
more educated than I am. All I can do
I don't know. I wouldn't say that.
when it comes to topics like that, all I can really do is hear the arguments made by people more educated than me and adopt the ones which I find most convincing. I can't purport
That's
to like
exactly what I do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that everyone does that until they're at a doctoral level, frankly. In
Yeah.
philosophy, like synthesis and creating new ideas is kind of a high level thing. It's yeah. But anyway, yeah, it's not like something that I have such an invested position in that I could really actively debate it, you know?
Cool. Well, it might be a good, since we're both really shitty with it, it might be actually a good discussion to have sometime because then we're on like equal playing field. We'll both be like
Maybe.
equally dumb. All right. So what other, besides Essie, what other content creators like inspired you?
Well, I really do like ContraPoints, though actually I hadn't watched a ContraPoints video until after I started streaming. I think that ContraPoints, a lot of people don't even pay attention to this because ContraPoints is so good at it, but she is a master at concisely delivering complex information in a way that doesn't feel pretentious or highly academic.
Mm-hmm.
She is better at that than anybody else. The videos that she does on these topics have no wasted space, no gaps in the script. They're long videos, but they are refined down to a diamond, which is incredible. It's something that I want to get better at because I know that I can be overly verbose at times, and I'm sure that's fun for some people, but it's also important to make your points quickly, especially in a debate format where eventually, if you keep talking, you're going to be interrupted by your opponent. Um, so I'm definitely consistently inspired by her performance with regards to that. In terms of other, let me think. I'm trying to think of like strong influences because obviously I've been influenced by many dozens of people in a positive way. I mean,
Cool.
Destiny goes without saying, of course, because I watched him for ages and ages.
Mm-hmm.
Um, hmm.
Are you like nervous to say it?
No, I'm
Is
not.
it
No, no,
someone
no.
really
I just
controversial?
I have a really bad memory, and also I'm trying to keep it at like a level of high involvement. Oh no, radical reviewer, not really academics. I like their content, but I mean like in terms of the content creation. What do I? Jeez. Yeah, I'll come back to you on that one. Okay.
Okay. With ContraPoints, it's
Oh,
interesting.
video game donkey.
Oh,
See,
okay.
it's not
Cool.
just about the info, it's how you deliver it. In fact, it's 98% how you deliver it. Your average
Mm-hmm.
voter, your average online internet politics participant knows so little about the subjects they argue over that if you read the first paragraph of a Wikipedia article, you can probably trash them. So it's not the knowledge that's the issue necessarily, at least not always. Often it's the ability to present it. And Donkey's style of sort of absurdist beat humor is something that I both really enjoy, and it's something that I try to incorporate into how I talk. Anybody who's watched me stream, knows when I'm doing like the hand movements. I'm going like, hey, yeah. I do that stuff deliberately. Not to say that it's all forced. It comes to me naturally, but it's something that I work on doing because I think that acting that way can be disarming. It helps people not necessarily not take you seriously, but it helps them try to meet your arguments where you are because you're not coming off like some antagonist or some threat, you know?
Yeah, I've always heard you need to give people an out when you're debating with them.
Mhm.
So, they can actually come to your side without feeling like their entire humanity and dignity is on the line, right?
Yeah, yeah. The more you don't want to make people defensive, basically. Though usually
Hmm.
when you debate a person, it's about convincing the audience rather than convincing
Yeah,
the
it's not actually
individual.
about.
There are
Mhm.
even then though, you want to make sure that you don't engage in behavior which is too high horsey, or you don't want to be too essentialist with it, because you always want the person who's hearing your arguments to believe that they can be the one smart one who realizes that they were wrong. You never want them to think, "Oh God,
Yeah.
so I'm an idiot." You want them to think, "Oh wait, hold on, wait, oh, now I see past my contemporaries. I see beyond my peers. Now I can move to the next level." You want them to think they're being elevated beyond what they currently believe rather than kicked down to some lower rung, you know?
It's one of the biggest challenges I've had from going from like the platform of Discord to Twitch, because there's some similarities, but one of the biggest differences is that like in Discord, it's debating feels much more like you're trying to convince your opponent. And it feels, and maybe it's just like this in CC. I don't know about other servers. Well, you're kind of debate is like you're temporarily. You see each other as obstacles, but you're both trying to get to truth together, and you're using debate as a tool to get there. It's not a thing in and of itself, but
I've
of
never
course,
had a
like in
debate like
Twitch
that.
and never,
Never
never.
had a debate like that. Oh my
Well, maybe
God.
you should hang out in CC.
Well, The problem is, if a person is capable of having a conversation where they like cooperatively try to arrive at truth with their debate opponent, they're probably not a
Yeah,
person who's inflicting that much harm in the world. The problem is harm is inflicted on the world by people who are stupidly and unabashedly
that is
dogmatic.
true.
So those are the kinds of people that I have to attack. As much as fun as it would be for us all to be like, Socratic philosophers in the in the Parthenon, like
Hmm.
sipping tea while debating the nature of things. Unfortunately, I think we're a long way away from those kinds of debates being the ones that elevate our society.
Well, I had to learn that lesson the hard way because before I got into Discord, I was very idealistic about that, even with people with the most disgusting views
Mm.
possible. So I started debating Holocaust deniers, and I debated this one YouTuber. I'm not going to name him because I don't even want to give him more popularity, but I think he got kicked off the platform. And he was a Holocaust denier, and we got into like this big debate. He ends up rage quitting, and I think that, and I try to be so charitable with him in the conversation. I was using debate. I was like, no, I'm going to take him through all the evidence. And I'm going to take him to the truth. And then he's going to go tell all his followers, oh, guys, don't worry. I found the evidence. It's all good. It wasn't made up. And everything was going to be totally fine. And of course, he ends up messaging me and saying, oh, actually, I just don't give a shit whether or not
Yep.
6 million Jews died.
Yep.
So I don't want to continue. So it turned out that he was like this whole idea of like, oh, I'm just caring about the facts, and I'm just asking questions like that. It turned out to totally be bullshit. And I mean, now I feel like an idiot for ever believing that. But I mean, that's why they use that kind of rhetoric, because it does work, and it
Are
does
you
take advantage of like naive people.
are you familiar with Jean-Paul Sartre's writings on the anti-Semite?
No, no, feel
Can I
free to
read a
tell.
quote for you?
Yeah.
So it's uh never believe that anti-Semites are completely unaware of the absurdity of their replies. They know their remarks are frivolous, open to challenge, but they're amusing themselves, for it is their adversary who is obliged to use words responsibly, since he believes in words. The anti-Semites have the right to play. They even like to play with discourse, for, by giving ridiculous reasons, they discredit the seriousness of their interlocutors. They delight in acting in bad faith, since they seek not to persuade by sound argument, but to intimidate and disconcert. If you press them too closely, they will abruptly fall silent, loftily indicate by some phrase that the time for argument has passed. Unfortunately, and this is a mistake many liberals make. Sorry, I said liberals with a lot of ire in my tone there. I didn't mean that. An unfortunate mistake which is often made is the belief that everybody believes in rationality, but that's not true. There are people for which irrationality is the mantra by which they live their lives. They have very strong emotional beliefs on certain issues, and they do not care whether or not reality agrees or disagrees with it. Not because they don't care whether they're right or wrong, but because they don't believe in right or wrong, both epistemically and morally. They only believe in power. And I feel like Nazis pretty squarely fall in that camp. When I debate Nazis, I'm very rarely looking to persuade their audience by debunking their points. It's usually about making them feel humiliated. The debunking isn't about showing them the truth, it's about making them feel weak. Because in those moments of weakness to their audience, those content creators look a hell of a lot less appealing than they did a moment ago. This is the reason why all those fine,
Like you're taking away their power.
exactly, those identitarians out there don't like debating me no more, except for the randos who email me. It's because they know that's what happens. You're made to look like a fool, and it opens your audience up to the possibility that, hey, maybe this strong man I've been following isn't so all-knowing. That's the goal.
So, with it's interesting that you brought up anti-Semitism, right? Because I feel like you've gotten both criticism relating to that, particularly with your, I guess, like the thing that got you banned on Twitch, like the thing about Israel, and then on top of that, you also got criticized, particularly. I don't know if it was by the Black community, the Black nationalist community, when you were calling out anti-Semitism within, I guess, the Black nationalist community. So why do you think the left is so rarely critical of, I guess, that kind of anti-Semitism?
It's not that the left isn't critical of anti-Semitism, it's that The majority of the people on the left are socially maladjusted white boys online who are terrified of criticizing a minority group because they know it can be used against them for liberal idpol reasons. I'm sorry, but that's the reason
Mm,
why. There are plenty of black people out there that are scum of the earth, anti-Semite, racist pieces of shit. There are plenty of them out
yeah.
there because black people are people and people suck pretty often. But unfortunately, those groups have the opportunity to weaponize their identity to avoid criticism. A very common group that does this often, yeah, Luis Farrakhan does this. The Nation of Islam, in its modern iteration, does this. And what was those? What were they called? The Hebrew,
Black Hebrew Israelites.
yes, the Israelites, yeah. Those groups, those people, they believe essentially identical things to what Nazis believe.
Mm,
If you actually look into their positions, they believe that homosexuality is degenerate and destroying the black family, that the Jewish control over the media is being used to facilitate the destruction of the black family. They believe that they need an ethno-nationalist society to protect their interests. They believe that women must be subservient to men. I mean, in every respect, they're just flipped Nazis. It's just the Nazi thing, except it's flipped. Yeah.
yeah.
They'll make the same claims about Jews doing the slave trade. White Nazis do this. Black Nazis do this. It's just a different, group of people benefiting from the ideology. And this is true. Nothing that I said right now is a matter of opinion. But there are leftists who will bristle uncomfortably, including people in my community, because I'm talking about black people. I think this is a very toxic response. I think that as rational people, we should be able to impugn the severity of these ideas without being caught up in the cheapest of liberal idpol games. And those groups, the Hebrew Israelites, the Black Israelites, they know that people are uncomfortable with these topics, so they'll weaponize it. There are videos out there of these people with views identical to Nazis, who will run around and claim that other people are racist for criticizing them. The same way, by the way, that white Nazis will say you're anti-white for
Yeah.
criticizing them, so on and so forth. Um, I think that people are people. I do not essentialize behavior onto race. While it is certainly the case that white people benefit from white privilege here in America and in many other places, and that tends to influence our thinking, it influences everyone's thinking. I think that it's very sociologically ignorant to suggest, for example, that black people are not capable of internalizing the same basic tenets of white supremacy. They grew up in the same neighborhood as me. I had
Mhm.
black neighbors. Are you like? Did they watched the same TV shows as me. We had the same lessons drilled into our heads. We may have interpreted them differently, but we're all susceptible to the same propaganda. And because of that, and because of, the fact that we're all human and fallible, some people are just gonna kind of suck, whether they're black or white. And we should be able to impugn those ideas without turning it into some weird race war thing, which is what happens every time. When a white person does something that these communities don't like, they'll impugn them for being white. But then when a person from one of those communities does something that I think is morally reprehensible and you criticize them for that, people will accuse you of being anti-black. It's a problem. And it's not because leftists are racist or disproportionately inclined towards anti-Semitism. It's because they're weak. It's because they have succumbed to the most cynical tenets of liberal idpol. And if we're to deal with that problem fairly, we're going to need to, learn to stand up straight with our spine, erect, and look at people with bad ideas in the eye and say, that's a bad idea.
Interesting that you bring up that criticism, like that point, because I've been really frustrated with the left for a while when it comes to anti-Semitism. Like I'm Jewish myself, right?
Mhm.
So for a while, I felt like they put me in like this category of being like white privileged European, and even more so like super white. That's what I would say is
Super
like this
white. That's the
attitude, yeah,
mega white. Okay.
which actually is like a very anti-Semitic trope, right? The idea that like Jews are incredibly privileged and controlling and all this stuff.
Mhm.
But even though I knew it happened way more on the right, it bothered me more from the left. There, like one part of it was there's a part that it feels like a sense of betrayal, right?
Mhm.
Um, but the other part is just how much people get away with things like that on the left. So, and I know you're saying that they're not actually really they're not really being anti-Semitic. They're just afraid to speak up. But like, there's someone, for example, like I've met so many Black Hebrew Israelites on Twitter that say the most anti-Semitic, vile shit. And if that person was like a right winger or like a Nazi or something, they would have 100% gotten banned by now. But they're just like allowed to continuously spew this stuff, and no one cares.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's an oversight. There are leftists who perpetuate anti-Semitic ideas. There's no denying that. A lot of people are under the impression that anti-Semitism is more of a abstract ideological problem than a real one. Whereas actually, if you look at the data, excuse me, Jewish people receive an ungodly disproportionate number of hate crimes to their group. Here in America, I mean, what are Jews? 2% of the population? Maybe? I don't know. And they get just a huge, I think like proportional to their size of the population, I think they get like 10 or 12 times as many hate crimes per capita that you would expect of a group their size, which is extraordinary. It's more than any other group, more than Black people, more than gay people. Or wait, I think it was only ethnic groups that I was looking at in that chart. Well, more than Black people. It's a real problem. And I think a lot of people are a little blasé about it, or they think that, I think they overcompensate because there are liberals who will spuriously accuse leftists of anti-Semitism anytime leftists say they don't like, you know, the elites, and liberals will like clutch their pearls and they go, "Oh my God, it's a Nazi," which I imagine is frustrating to many of these leftists. But I don't think that's an excuse to then go ahead and downplay the extent to which anti-Semitism does exist, or to implicitly downplay it by not taking it seriously.
Yeah. No, it actually makes me so happy that you agree with me. I didn't know if you would, to be honest, because it feels like such a weird thing. It feels like so opposite of the rhetoric that I'm often hearing on the left. So I don't know. I think it's really cool that you're more reasonable and willing to take on that stuff, especially with the criticism about that. In terms of Israel, so I think you and I are both in agreement that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, right?
Yeah, I would hope so.
But do you think that anti-Zionism can ever be like a shield for anti-Semitism?
Oh yeah,
Like that it's like a dog whistle?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Nazis do this all the time. They'll be like, and the Israel is controlling America. AIPAC is like, yeah, and it's just the Jewish question. Instead of just saying Jews, they'll say Israel. Yeah. I think if a person is to make good faith critiques of Israel, I think that there is a burden we need to place on ourselves to speak responsibly. I think it's very easy to do that.
Yes.
I haven't always spoken responsibly in the past, but principally, I do believe that like it's pretty easy to do conceptually. If you have a criticism of Israel, all you really have to do is point out policies or behaviors that you dislike. If you start going into like the Israeli lobby is controlling America shit, then you've kind of like let's be real. Nobody would ever levy that accusation having looked at the data unless they were internalizing at least some anti-Semitic tropes. Because the extent to which Israel influences American foreign policy is 100% in line with pre-existing military and political interests that the American group, like that the American electorate has. It's like our presence in Israel makes sense. We want a military base that's in the Middle East. That's why we put so much money into it.
They're not doing it for the Jews. They're doing it for themselves.
Yeah,
right?
Not to mention evangelical Christians are some of the most hardcore Zionists out there. The reason why they are is because the prophecy of rapture says that Jewish people need to reclaim their homeland so that the rapture can begin. That's a real thing. It sounds like a fake made-up thing, but that's real. There are tens of millions of Americans who want to support Israel specifically because it fits into their doomsday prophecy. That's not Jewish control over America. That's evangelicals attempting to use Jews as their pawns. The strings are being held on the other foot, my friends. Yeah, it's just a lot of lefties engage in really surface level criticism of the Israeli-American relationship.
Well, it's part of what I try to do with my channel. Like I study Israel-Palestine, so it's one of the few areas I do know a lot about. And so one of the ways I try to teach people one of the things that I try to do is to teach people how to criticize Israel in a responsible way, because if you do it in a way that uses like anti-Semitic tropes or language, you're not going to get through to anyone, and you're not going to even help the Palestinians that way. So you need to use the right kind of language and just have the right tools at your disposal. So you don't immediately make people feel like you're just being an anti-Semite.
Look, I
And
want to be
I
real.
don't,
Most lefties
yeah,
don't give a fuck about Palestinians. They just shit on Israel because they see their friends shooting in Israel and they want to be part of the group. Okay, that's
I
unironically
highly
it.
suspect that's true.
There
Yeah,
are
you're
like
right.
100 countries on Earth right now that are doing some heinous shit. Probably all of them are, but explicitly heinous shit. And leftists hyper focus on Israel not because they have some special interest or care for it, but because their friends do it, and yeah, that's it. Seriously, it's just like a group circle jerk. Because I've talked to some of these people, and like they're like, ah, fuck Israel. The Palestinian people need restitution. They care, and like that's great. I do believe that. I do think the Palestinian people are being subjected to like a slow pot cooker
Mhm.
genocide right now. I do genuinely believe that. I think it's a crime against humanity. I think there are solutions that need to be levied immediately and decisively to address that. But a lot of it is really just lefties trying to fit in with their 28 other lefty friends who are also saying the same shit about Israel, you know?
Yeah, and when people are criticizing it, like they rarely know about, I don't know, the various Palestinian organizations or the fact that Palestinians have two different groups that are representing them, Fatah and Hamas. They don't understand the differences between them, so it's like they don't even. Their focus is so much. It's so much more on hating Israel than actually finding a solution right now for the Palestinians.
Kind of like how
And
they
I
feel
guess
about
that's
America.
yeah. So, and I think that I just wish that people would understand why Jews get so defensive about it and immediately think, oh, like they're being anti-Semitic. And even though I think it's wrong to do that, I understand where that comes from because Jews, like a lot of people, are like a traumatized group, right? And when you're traumatized, you see trauma everywhere. So that's kind of like a consequence of that. So I think it's cool that you want to be responsible with your language and also that you recognize that you haven't in the past,
Yeah, well,
right?
I can't blame Jewish people for being a little defensive over Israel, even if they're not Zionists, like a little defensive over Israel. Because if you're a
Hmm.
Jewish person, you've probably experienced or at least seen a lot of anti-Semitism, and then like your IRL, you're walking around, so you hear somebody's like, "Yeah, fuck Israel." Like, what are you gonna do then when you hear that? Like, what's the immediate association you're gonna make in your mind? Now, it's possible you know this person, you know they're actually talking about Israel, but there is a lot of conflation. I can't blame Jewish people for being a little bit antsy about that sort of stuff. Good faith conversation is the only way forward here. There's just no other way of getting around it. Unfortunately, that requires nuance, and that is something that's in very short supply when it comes to the Israeli Palestinian conflict.
Yep, that is very true. And yeah, that's why I appreciate you saying what you did. Um, are there any criticisms that you've kind of gotten online that have been, because you seem like you're very much about being strong and not being weak and all that stuff. But I mean,
Strong of
everyone,
character, just to be
strong
perfectly clear,
character.
because people misinterpret me
Okay.
on this sometimes. I don't mean strong in the sense that you have to be like physically strong, or in the sense that you have to sleep for 9 hours a day, then get up and do a 3 mile run, and then go home and eat 6 pounds of chicken breast. And like, I don't, when I say strong, I mean strong of conviction. I think that people
Yeah.
should have good beliefs, be morally strong, and that they should have the conviction to do what they can to act and realize those beliefs. That's what I think. When I think of strength, because, oh God, strength, people impugn me for this sometimes. Strength means so many different things, okay? When a Nazi says
Hmm.
they admire strength, they're lying to you, okay? A Nazi does not care
Yeah.
about strength. I care about strength. Like the strength of a Syrian refugee trying to start a new life with with their one child when they like make their
Hmm.
way to Europe, or the strength of like a single mother, or like this, that's strength, like that's real strength. What Nazis care
Yeah.
about is power, the power to control and dominate, humiliate and hurt people. That's not what I care about. So I only care about moral conviction, the kind of strength that I think benefits society. That's what I'm, yeah, speaking
Yeah.
positively
That's a
to.
good way to put it. Well, even with saying those things,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, being an online figure, and you mentioned this earlier, you're going to be subjected to tons of criticism, some fair, some really unfair, some really scary, right? Like, has there been any criticism that really, like, that really hurt you?
um Unfortunately, I'd love to give a compelling answer here, but not really, no. The criticisms that I get from the rest of the internet are largely completely fucking unhinged. There are some people who I trust to give me fair criticisms of my behavior, but the
Hmm.
degree of derangement that I see from most of the people who disagree with me precludes me from being able to take any of it seriously. If there are people who have criticisms for me, usually if a person has what I would consider a fair criticism, I'll usually have them on my stream. I'm happy to hear them out here. I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever turned someone away because I didn't want to hear a criticism. There are people, of course, who've wanted to come on to yell at me who I've had to say no to because I get about 8 to 12 debate requests a day. I have to engage in some filtering.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So there's filtering there. But beyond that, no, I don't think so. I think that most of the criticisms levied my way are a product of people who are very unfamiliar with my content and mostly talk about me the same way I said lefties talk about Israel. They see their friend doing it, so they jump in, you know?
Do you think it's necessary to have that attitude to be a content creator and like a public figure?
No, I don't think that people generally get the same amount of criticism as me online. I think that for a lot of people, being able to take the criticism of a larger group is actually necessary. If you take, for example, I don't know, let's take a look at James Charles, who right now is being
Hmm.
impugned for sexting like 24 underage boys or something like that. I've seen some of the criticisms being levied against James Charles. I would suggest he takes them right now. That would be good for him and for the rest of the world, I think. But I think I'm in a relatively unique situation where there was a complete disconnect between my criticism and familiarity with my content, you know?
Well, has streaming like ever and just tell me, please, if I get like too personal, just feel free to just be like, oh, like it's a bit too personal for me.
Hmm?
And that's totally fine. But has streaming ever affected your mental health, like in a damaging kind of way?
There are definitely times when it's stressful, but I don't really freak out about it. It's really hard for me to freak out over this stuff. I'm successful. I'm situated well financially. So even if like things go tits up, I'll have some time to get acclimated to normie space and go back to working a regular job. God forbid I ever have to do that,
Hmm.
though. I'd much rather be doing this. Um,
Yeah.
and such. It's frustrating sometimes. There have been times where people who I've never spoken to, but I nonetheless respect, um, I'll like look online, I'll see them shit talking me, which is always a little bit frustrating. But again, at this point, I try not to center my self perception too much in how other people think of me, because the mob online is frivolous and inconsistent in the best of times. It'd be a very silly thing of me to do to base my self esteem on their estimate of my moral worth.
Yeah. That's why Nazi lists are a really bad idea. Um, but have you ever considered, was there ever like a really hard day where you considered quitting?
Considered quitting. Well, the roughest day actually was me getting banned from Twitch because I was smaller at the time. My
Hmm.
big streams back then were like 300 views, you know, which is, by the way, that's pretty good when you're just getting started, but it's not to the point where you have a solid career set ahead of you.
Yeah.
Um, but my mods in my community, you know, the people who I trusted a little more, were like, hey, next day you're streaming on YouTube. All right. I know you're disheartened, but keep the momentum going next day. And it actually ended up working out. That process worked, because if it had been up to me, I would have laid in bed for like a couple days just on my phone, you
Yeah, I
know,
feel
like
like that's what I would do.
yeah. I think one of the things that people really overestimate is the the extent to which the internet remembers things. If you ever feel
Hmm.
like you're maligned online, if there's a community that dislikes you, or if you fucked up, like legitimately fucked up, and you're getting well-deserved feedback for it,
Yeah.
just keep moving forward. Listen to what you can, take seriously what you think is worth taking seriously, and keep moving forward. Because the best thing that you can do is to just push right through it. You want all the people who are still on your side to continue to enjoy your content. You don't want them to fall off. You want to just keep moving forward. I think I have an exceptionally supportive community, which is good because I need it, because I have an astonishingly unsupportive, broader online environment.
Isn't that a bit of a, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that a bit of a conservative value? Maybe not a conservative in the Republican sense, but the idea of like, being headstrong, steady the course, just keep going, don't complain. Um, that's like a very classic conservative value.
Possibly. I mean, you could argue that it ties into American values surrounding like self-reliance and independence, but I
Hmm.
don't think those should be conservative values. I think that things like discipline, self-reliance, steadfastness are just virtues to humans, and that we should all be able
Yeah.
to adopt them and use them. I think one of the biggest mistakes that the left has made is that how do I phrase this appropriately? I think that the left has gone past being accepting of people who do not act in these ways and sometimes actively encourage it to the extent that people who are self-reliant and disciplined actually kind of get made fun of or passively discouraged in social groups. It's kind of the way how, how like 15 years ago being mentally ill online was completely stigmatized, and nowadays it's so common for people to talk about it that it almost feels like it's being used as like a fashion statement, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like that a little bit. Like we might have to course correct. Not become less accepting, mind you. The accepting part's good. I
Hmm.
support the accepting part. But don't like, look, I'll say this much, okay? I want people to be accepting of people who have depression. I have had depression. I have bipolar disorder. Manic depression's one half of that disorder. That's great. Be accepting.
Hmm.
However, I do not want people to be encouraging of that type of thing because unfortunately, nobody ever got undepressed by people enabling all of their depressive tendencies, habits, and self-perceptions. That is
Yeah.
not how that works.
No, and all the evidence with therapy with this stuff goes against that right now. Like CBT, I don't know if you've ever done like cognitive behavioral
I'm
therapy,
familiar with the
but
process.
yeah, like I used to have social anxiety, and now I can stream on here because of like, and it's basically a really fancy way of saying to confront your fears and in just like in baby steps. So yeah, I don't know, like the attitude of just like accepting everything. Um, it doesn't necessarily apply to a lot of stuff with mental health.
Yeah, I mean, and just people have a difficulty. Nobody feels valid these days. That's the problem. Nobody feels valid. Everybody
Mhm.
feels like they need somebody else, or preferably a large group of people, to affirm their identity, which I don't think is good. I think validity should be an internal process. In fact, I think it only can be an internal process. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't express the sentiment that, say, trans people are valid, because they are. We're pushing back against a broader cultural narrative that they're not valid.
Mhm.
In that sense, you're fighting against a negative tendency. But on the whole, generally speaking, I think that validity is something that should radiate from within us. And the stuff that we get from the people around us shouldn't be a sense of our identity being valid. It should be companionship and entertainment and friendship and love and so on and so forth. I think those are emotions that are much more steadily received from your social groups than validity. I've just seen a lot of people who don't have very high self esteem, but who compensate for it with a constant deluge of affection and approval from their friends and from social media. And if these people have one bad day, I mean, if they upload a picture where it's at a bad angle and a bit of like neck fat shows or something, they have a meltdown. They get one negative criticism, like one little bad statement, and it's the only thing that's in their head. And that's because they haven't developed the proper process for having high self-esteem. They've subsidized it.
Do you think that like you have that like guess internal sense of validity?
I have to. If you can name search me on any social media platform, if I did not get my
Hmm.
sense of validity from myself, then I would not be capable of doing this. If I
Yeah.
relied on public approval to do the job that I do, then I would have quit a long time ago. That's not to
Hmm.
say I don't appreciate my community. I do. I absolutely do. But they're not where I get my validity from. I just like having them around. Supportive. I get
Have
support
you
from them.
always been like that?
No, no.
So like what was the change? Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, it's a whole story.
Yeah, I don't mind hearing it if you're
So,
willing to go into it.
high school and onward, I had a friend. It's a cute guy friend. A guy, very cute, hot even. I learned to draw, because this guy was an artist. And it was a fun thing to do with him. Because drawing in a group, by the way, is extremely fun. I think a lot of people downplay the extent. If you just get a giant sheet of like even butcher paper and some Sharpies, you can have fun for like hours with friends.
That does sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah, like it's just a very, but nobody does, because everyone's like insecure. I can't draw that. Well, it doesn't matter. Just draw. It just doesn't matter. It's just fun. But anyway, I got better at drawing, at least in part to impress this person. And over time, what used to be a fairly diverse friend circle that I had kind of faded away, and I was just best friends with this guy. And all the new friends that I made were met through that guy. I met 2 girlfriends consecutively through that guy. All the new friends that I made, it was from that guy. I mean, everything, was orbited around the relationship that I had with this guy. And we would hang out all the time. We would go do archery together. There were free archery lessons in a big park nearby. Very, very nice place. We'd go to that, and we'd hang out all the time. We graduated. We go into college. We both stayed in Los Angeles together. We'd hang out. Eventually, he moved a little farther away, but that was fine. I would take the metro to go over to him. An hour and a half long. I'd have to take the 720 to the metro, then the Metro Underground to Union Station, and the Gold Line from the Metro Underground and Union Station all the way over to wherever the fuck he lived, and then I'd walk for 20 minutes. And that was one way. Loved hanging out with this guy. And eventually, he left. He had to move over to the East Coast. We'd play games all the time, League of Legends, so we know how to maintain a friendship online. But obviously, when you're distant, when you're far apart, it's harder to maintain a strong friendship. Now, my self-esteem, I've always had decent self-esteem, but I'd grown increasingly reliant on this guy. Didn't see it at the time, but now I do, obviously, retrospect. And the distance definitely like watered down the relationship a bit. I flew over and hung out with him once, and that was cool. But then we thought something would be super duper cool. What we do is me and him and a bunch of our friends in the periphery, who are kind of friends with me, but definitely friends with him, we would all fly over to a beach house in Delaware, and we would spend like a week just chilling out together, in a way we hadn't before, because many of these friends we'd only ever seen online. So we go over to the beach house. It's great, I have a little bit of money that I had saved up, so I flew myself and some other people over there. And we called it the fuck house because there was a lot of sexual tension between some of the people there. It was this big, nice beach house. It was 3 stories tall. It was right next to the boardwalk. It was a paradise. And anyway, I go over there, and I'll shorten the story just a little bit here, but the basic gist of it is that I made an ass of myself while I was there, because I had overestimated the extent to which this friend circle cared about me, and I had overestimated the extent to which my best friends still cared about me. Basically, you go over there, you think, I'm equal friends with these 12 or so people, but no. I was one of the orbit now. I wasn't part of the inner core. It wasn't him and me getting everyone together over there. It was him getting everyone together over there. I was part of the orbit. And I just couldn't handle that. I had a panic attack there, actually. I was so anxious about all of it. And, of course, me being a fairly confrontational person, I got angry at people, and I confronted people with my unmet expectations. I'm making this sound way more put together than it was, by the way. It was a shit show. So none of that went well. And eventually we all had to go home. And I went home.
How old were you when this was going on?
I think I would have had to have been maybe 22.
Okay.
Maybe 23. It had to be in that ballpark. Too old for this. But I went back home. And after that, I basically just got removed from the group chat. Well, they didn't remove me from it. They just made another group chat. And actually, I remember the new group chat they made was on Discord, not Skype. And I was like, what is Discord? Skype is perfect. Oh, no. All of our gaming needs are being met on Skype. What possible reason could anyone have to move to Discord? This antiquated backwoods application is doomed. Why would anyone not want Skype? So I stayed on Skype. They all moved to Discord. And I was still in the original group chat, but person by person by person would leave. And eventually my friend left it too. And yeah, just eventually a little while after that, I confronted my ex-best friend over the phone and got real mad at him and yelled and yelled and yelled. And then we didn't talk for 3 years.
Wow.
Not for lack of trying. I would still think about him all the time and send friend requests, you know. And it was just this whole unhinged mess. But time heals all wounds, you know. I went to university, and even though I would still think about this guy often, in fact, I distinctly remember one of my university classes in my junior year. I was there, like, looking at my phone in class, looking at the friend request sent thing on Discord, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, eventually, and I mean like maybe a year and a half ago, we did reconnect and we did talk, and we're two very different people now. And I don't care about him anymore, and he doesn't care about me anymore, and that's probably for the best. At some point in between me starting university and right now today, I stopped caring. I think the thing that helped was the closure element of having a conversation with him. I met him in LA. We got ramen.
Yeah.
Very good ramen
Oh,
together.
so you actually saw each other in person after?
Yeah, we had to plan it, but he moved back to LA eventually, and we saw each other, and it was fine. And the time we hung out, by the way, was fine. It was totally fine. But we weren't like best friends anymore. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't like, it was just we were hanging out, catching up, and
It was like the epilogue.
exactly, it was an epilogue. And I remember he asked me. It must have been around New Year's, the beginning of 2020, because he asked me how my whole streaming career was doing. And at the time, I had like 50,000 subs. And to me, that was spectacular. That was an ungodly number of subs. And I was making
I would kill for that.
Money untold, 50,000 subs. Great.
Yeah.
So I talked to him about it, and I played it up. And I haven't really talked to him since. I think a couple of times maybe, but now I'm, 10 times that size. So it'd be funny. I thought that was the cap back then. But anyway, the point that I'm very laboriously trying to get to is that I made a mistake. Because I was weak, I allowed my self-worth to depend on others' perceptions of me. And then, in a double whammy, I didn't even maintain those friendships properly. I didn't talk to any of that friend circle except for my one best friend. It was uncharitable and unpleasant to be around, because I only cared about his attention. They were just distractions from him and me, not compliments to it. I wasn't strong enough to see the path that I was going down. Eventually, I paid for it. And if you don't want that to happen to you, then all you got to do is heed my words of caution and not do the things that I did. Always make sure that as much as you care about your friends, you can go a day without them. God, I remember the worst days of that were when I was so jealous. This was right after the when we all met up at that lodge in Delaware. There were days where I was so jealous that I would actually, this is embarrassing. This is like crazy ex behavior, except we never even dated. Was I would actually wake up, I'd eyes pop open, okay, in my parents' house, and I would think, he's playing League of Legends with somebody else, isn't he? And I'd go to that league tracker thing. I don't know, it was some website. Yeah. There are a million websites, and you can see if people of a given username are in game right now. I guess they pull from the API or something. And I would actually get angry when I was asleep. Like, there's no rational connection here. I was asleep.
Yeah, you were codependent.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, he was 3 hours ahead of me over on the East Coast, which means that even assuming we woke up at the same time, which we didn't, he woke up earlier than me relative to his own time zone too. He'd be up hours and hours and hours before me, and I wake up and I'm angry that that he's playing League of Legends with a mutual friend, with a person who we both like.
Yeah.
Very, very silly. If you see yourself engaging in that kind of behavior, people, you need to. It took me a while to get over this too. You got to slam the brakes on this. All right. Take a couple of days offline. Go to a local event. Make a new friend. One of the big problems is that I didn't think I could make another friend like that. Yeah, I could. And I have since then. I did it. I've made healthier friends since then. Way healthier friendships.
When you're in that world, it's so hard to imagine. It's like when you're dating someone, like, it's so hard to imagine meeting someone as cool. Like, you can't really imagine, like, the people that you're going to meet.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I'm not levying any blame at that guy, by the way, because he was so normally the story would be he made me feel like there was no one else who would be as good of a friend to me as him. That never happened at all.
Yeah.
He was always encouraging me to go and make other friends. He was good. He was like, hey, Vaush, my actual name, by the way. I feel like this relationship is unhealthy. I feel like you're, being codependent. Maybe you should try to do this, Maybe you should go to this live art drawing thing. Maybe you should go see a movie with this person or something or other. So no blame.
He recognized it was unhealthy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. He was way, way more socially competent. Wait, I take that back. He was a socially incompetent buffoon. But in this specific respect, he was very prescient. He was good. Yeah. Anyway. So at some point after all of that, after I'd gotten closure, after I realized that I could make new and better friendships in a healthier way, I stopped caring, and I don't think I'm ever going to be like that again. I think that's the one and done mistake. It's like the chicken pox. You get it, and you're good. Or at least I hope that's the case. I hope I'm not 58 and this whole shit happens over again. And I'm glad, by the way, because if I hadn't gotten over that, if I was still like pseudo friends with that guy now, in the same position now that I was 5 years ago, I wouldn't be able to do the streaming job. I would be way too vulnerable to criticism online.
I almost feel like that was kind of like your coming of age moment. Like if someone was going to make a movie about your life, right? Like that would be the story. That would be like the moment, I guess, you really became you.
That was probably the most emotionally resonant moment in my life. Well, it wasn't a moment. It was a multi-years long process. But the whole thing was definitely the growing up story, which is fine. It's a little embarrassing in retrospect, but I think that everybody has moments in their life that are embarrassing.
Everyone has stuff like this.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Every single person. Except for Destiny. Destiny would never have this, right?
No, Destiny doesn't have any awkward moments in his past. I can
no, of course not. But yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I think it's cool that you look back at it that honestly, and I think it's really important when you're growing and as like we become adults and all that stuff to have that attitude about our past and not just automatically victimize ourselves in every situation. But what would you say to someone who said that like your attitude about strength, not saying that this is my perspective, but that your attitude about being strong or not being weak is kind of like the language you're using is kind of like a remnant of toxic masculinity?
I would say that they're only looking at the semantic words that I'm using rather than the meaning I'm trying to convey. Because nothing, and I have never once over the course of my streaming career encouraged people down a road that is like even resembling toxic masculinity. Like posture, don't show your emotions, strength over everything. That's not what I go for. I like conviction, I like consistency, I like moral worth. Those are the things that I think really stand out about a person. But in terms of like the toxic masculinity thing, I feel like I kick back on that pretty much all the time. One of the things that I like doing on my stream is looking different than many other online leftists. Now, I get called a fat soy boy anyway, because there's no getting around that. But most of the online lefty people, except for like, I guess, Beau of the Fifth Column, that's the one real standout that I can think of, are kind of like, they're like theater kids. It's like the colored lighting and the so on and so forth. Whereas I'm loud, vacuous, boorish, aggressive.
And you've got like a Viking kind of look, right?
Yeah, and I work out, I'm loud. I feel like I project masculinity more than most people do in this space. And funnily enough, Abigail Thorne recognized this in her coming out video where she was like, oh, and I get messages from people and they're saying, oh, you're like my lefty masculine icon. And Abigail was like, sorry. Whoop, nope. Hey, well, that was fun. Well, it lasted. So
was that video not like the best thing ever?
It was a great
coming out video.
I have never seen somebody handle coming out with more grace than I
literally cried watching that. It was amazing.
It was pretty extraordinary. If there was any portion of my life that was coordinated as effectively as she had that, then I would be a trillion sub YouTuber. Okay, if I had even a fraction.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I have no patience whatsoever. I talk about anything and everything. If I, oh my God, if I was a content creator, I realized I was trans, I'd be screaming about it from day one, I feel. I'd be like, well, guys, day one of my transition vlog, and I'm sure that it would be a disaster. But Abigail, a little bit more composed than that, handled it pretty well.
I've noticed that a huge part of what you talk about in your advocacy in general is about trans people, right?
Mhm.
And you're not trans yourself, right? Am I correct on that, or
I'm not trans,
I
no.
don't know?
Yeah, these
Just in
vultures
case.
aren't gonna get me.
They want to get canceled. But so is there a particular reason why you talk so much about trans issues? Is there something that connects you, I guess, to trans people in that way?
Yeah, it's not that I have a connection to trans. I have a lot of trans friends. I think I'll say this much. I think trans people are funnier than cis people. I think that suffering tends to make people funnier, and it's not that every trans person
It's
suffers,
probably
but
why Jews are funny, right?
that is probably why Jews are
Yeah.
funny. Yeah. So, you know, you find a trans Jew and you've got the whole you got it covered. Really though, I
Yeah.
feel like I mean, yeah, Contra Infinity, the darkness. Yeah. I think that one of the core components of humor is the ability to empathize with other people, because if you can't, then you don't know what other people laugh at. And empathy is a tool that is sharpened through personal experience. And trans people have personal experience. So I don't know, maybe they're funnier. I don't know, just my personal opinion. The main reason though, it's not because I have some like special affinity for trans people. It's because they're the bulwark at the moment. If it's not trans people, they go
Mhm.
down, and then it becomes gay people. And if it's not gay people, then they go down, and then I don't know, we start talking about the civil rights era again. The
Yeah.
discourse around social progressivism will always hyperfixate on the most socially aberrant group at this moment. And if you can defend that group, then you defend by proxy every group that came before them. If you like, there was never in America where trans rights are upheld but gay marriage is revoked. That can't happen. It's not possible. You have to go through one, then the other. There's no way to get around that. So if you
Mhm.
defend the line, if you hold the line, then you don't have to worry as much about the groups before them.
Yep. No, I think that that's very true. Do you mind if we get into some of your controversies?
Oh, sure. I
Mm.
love my controversy. I feel like they're
Yeah,
half of what I
sure.
talk about.
Um, well, um, all right. I had to do all this research because I actually knew nothing about your controversies beforehand. So I had to do
That's
a
heartening.
ton of research, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so number one, I guess, is on the list is that the list
Mhm.
is
The
you
archive,
were
yes, the litany, the
the
book.
archive. Um, so you were accused of a sexual harassment, right?
Mhm.
Um, so like, could you tell us a bit about what happened with that? Because not everyone knows. I know you probably like, oh, I've talked about this so much, but
No, it's
not
cool.
everyone knows.
At this point, it's all been like it's been said so much that it's just so
Yeah.
basically like for three 3.5 years ago, I was a non-content creator, and I was on Destiny's server, and I was talking around there. I made a friend. That friend was I'm not even gonna name names. I made a friend, okay, a lady friend, and we were friends. This was early university, I think. So what would that have been like? Three? It feels like 3.5 years ago is an acceptable time frame to put this in. And
Hmm.
anyway, this what I'm gonna say here is going to feel like an excuse. It's not, okay? I want to make that perfectly clear. This doesn't absolve my behavior in the slightest. But the time period when this took place was the time period right before, or sorry, right after everything that I just talked to you about with my friend from high school. So I
Yeah.
was not in a great mood, to put it very lightly, and I was very insecure about my ability to make new friends. So
Hmm.
so anyway, I was with this friend that I made was just excessively and cringely and flippantly sexual um when talking to her, and to an extent which I think undeniably constitutes harassment. And
Yeah.
the logs are all out there, and it was bad behavior, and there's really no getting around that. And after some time of that, for reasons which actually were unrelated to that behavior, we stopped talking. I think we had a disagreement over like what feminism meant or something like that. I don't actually remember the specifics. But sometime after that, we stopped talking to each other and we stopped being friends. And then life moved on. I forgot about that, I guess. And I started to be a content creator, started live streaming. And the person with
Yeah.
whom I was previously friends still didn't like me. I think that's a charitable assessment of her position on me. And
Mhm.
tried to essentially get me canceled by having those messages like sent to Destiny. And then Destiny did a big stream going over them, which made me look bad, which, because they were bad. It's funny how that happens. And yeah, the fallout from that has been known henceforth forevermore. But that's basically the gist of it. It's been a while, though. There might be some details that I'm forgetting, but I think that's about the gist of it.
Did you ever like apologize to that person for like all that stuff?
Well, I eventually did write out the legacy of this is a bit complicated. Initially, it was difficult for me to apologize because I was blocked on everything, and also because the person to whom I had behaved inappropriately was odious to me in other and largely unrelated ways that made me hate her.
Hmm.
So when
Because you
when
were
this all
resentful already.
right, for reasons unrelated to the
Hmm.
cancellation harassment thing. So I hated her mostly because of personality differences and disagreements on critical issues, which made it feel like, she's out to get me. And that contributed a lot to a lot of really toxic behavior that I engaged in to begin with. Because rather than seeing it for what it was, which was bad behavior being made public, it felt like I'm being sniped by the cancel mob. I don't think cancel culture was even like a term that people used back then, but
Yeah.
but if it was, I would have used it. Um anyway, it took me a little while, but I calmed down. And I still did not particularly like this person for a wide variety of reasons, but I was blocked on everything. And they put out a list, or she put out a list where she said she would like only accept an apology if I like donated $10,000 to a charity and like deleted something. There was some list that got put out, which was very, very silly. Like she would only accept an apology if I acceded to some ridiculous set of demands. And I think she asked me to contribute an amount of money that exceeded the contents of my bank account. So we're not doing that. Eventually, I wrote out a big thing where I explained the totality of the situation, and at the end, I do levy an apology directly to her, which I'm
All right,
sure
that's
she's
good.
read. I have never gotten a response to that. I imagine she still dislikes me. I still dislike her, but the apology that I wrote there is completely sincere.
Yeah, like that's such a tough situation where, especially when you've ended a friendship and there's probably stuff that you've done wrong, but like there's this defensive thing that just happens to all of us where all we can think of is how we've been wronged in those like particular incidents and stuff. So like, how would you encourage someone in the like, because I'm sure we've all done shitty things in the past. So how would you encourage someone or give advice to them about how to prevent your mistake in the future for them?
Well, I mean, owning up to it is obviously important. I think oh God, I see so many people make mistakes in this, and I feel like a poser making these arguments because it seems hypocritical because I've fucked up on this in the past. But generally speaking, I think one of the big issues is that people take a lot of their internal emotional world and they project it onto everyone else. So the reason why
Yeah.
I behaved the way I did was in large part because everything that took place was fucking embarrassing. It's really embarrassing to have Discord logs leaked, especially when you're behaving
Yeah,
that
I was
poorly.
gonna say having
That's
logs leaked, especially if you're sexting, like that sucks. That really
and
sucks.
for what it's worth, that person who leaked those logs didn't want Destiny to show them publicly. I don't know if Destiny had heard that and decided to go on with it anyway, or if he had not heard that there was a desire to keep them private and just went ahead with it anyway. But the whole
Mhm.
massive public spectacle wasn't something that was anticipated or desired by either party, myself or that person. So things got out of hands regardless, and it's so embarrassing. Maybe deservedly so, sure. I'm not saying it's not warranted. I'm just ugh. So I projected a lot of that onto other people. It was so embarrassing. The only way to get around it was to frame that situation in a way in which I couldn't be culpable for it. Because if I'm culpable for it, then I own up to the embarrassment, and that's not happening. And that led
Mhm.
to the when I went on Destiny's stream, I like tried to defend my behavior, um, which was obviously not good. So what you need to do when you fuck up, like actual fuck up, because most of my controversies are me being right and other people being mad at me, okay? That's like 98% of it.
Yeah.
Not always the case, as you know, as we are here. But if you actually do fuck up, you really have to take a deep breath, like a super, super deep breath, and you have to talk to some people around you, okay? Not so they can give you pats on the back or be your like cheerleader or be your training coach or whatever, but just have a conversation with them, just chill out for a second and think not about today, not about tomorrow, think 6 months from then. Think 2 years from then. How is this going to play out? What's the out here? And what you're going to find is, if you actually think about it that way, your out is never deny, deny, deny. Okay? It's never going to be some weird posturing defense. It's always going to be the most concise, contrite, forthcoming, and straightforward apology you can provide. And that's what you should always aim to do.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. Has this might sound like a weird question following up from that, but has this changed your approach to flirting, right? Like since that incident?
So what I did with that person could only in the most uncharitable possible world be called flirting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it hasn't changed
And I'm
my
sure from your
approach
perspective, that's what you were thinking, right?
well, in my mind, because I'm an idiot and still am, but not to this extent. When I was back then, I was thinking, I'm just being like cool.
Okay.
I'm just being, you know, I'm being a cool dude. That's,
Appreciate the honesty.
yeah. So that's where my brain was at, you know. It hasn't really changed how I flirt, because when I'm actually flirting, I try to put effort in. I put work in. I analyze the angles, you know. It definitely has changed how I talk to people online, though, because following that, so that was like what you'd call a legitimate cancellation. Fine, I'll take it. I'll take the L. But there have been many attempts afterwards to try to force L's on my forehead. People run at me with like a brand with an L on it. There are people who will fake screenshots. There are people who will doctor logs. And at this point, it has reached the point where I do not talk to anytime a fan says, "Oh my God, you're so cool," I just like send a heart. I ignore. I don't talk to anybody, because unfortunately, and I 'cause sometimes I see this happening too. I see people whose only server they're in are servers that I know have like right-leaning political affiliations, and they'll give me like bait messages. They'll give me like, "Hey, you're so hot. Can I see your fat dick?" And I know what's gonna happen if I engage with this person. If I respond to anything, they're going to push for it. If I provide a nude, they're going to say, "I'm actually 12, and then screenshot it and put it on Twitter, okay? So the only response that you can do with these people is just ignore or block. Ignore, block, ignore, block, ignore, block. That's all you can do, you know?
I've had the same things happen to me just like running CC, where people try to get some kind of blackmail on you, right? So they try to entrap you in certain situations. But I don't know. I feel like I almost had a privilege of being female in that situation, because women were just like so trained already to be suspicious of any dude messaging us, that I think probably it's harder for like guys that, you know, either get power in some kind of way or some kind of online presence to have to, you know, turn away, you know, women that, you know, might be potential, you know, like flirtations there. So I could see that.
Yeah, you definitely are trained to be more concerned. That is true. For a lot of, this is one of the reasons why there are so many fucking like groomers in the Smash community and stuff, okay? It's because playing video games obsessively gets you zero pussy until you reach the video game 1%, okay? And that can be a very jarring transition for a lot of people. They spend their entire upbringing doing nothing but playing in their dingy fucking basement. And then all of a sudden, they either, because they pop off in a stream, they join a team, they do a tournament, all of a sudden they get incredible amounts of attention and publicity and media and what have you, and a lot of them just lose their minds. They're like, "Oh my God, this is it! Finally, I've been starving in the desert. I've been dehydrated, and I finally found the oasis of pussy." Except, of course, because these people are undiscerning and often just don't care, it usually ends up to some sexual inappropriate behavior or like grooming minors or some shit. But I think that does lead to it. A lot of it is because like these guys have it in their heads that there's nothing for them, and then suddenly when there's anything for them, they latch onto it. It's like an incredibly toxic reaction to a sudden burst in fame and popularity. But like, I think you could like get where that comes from, right? Like, kind of the way that
It's like it's not good, but you can understand it.
well, it's not necessarily that I understand it. It just seems like a natural sociological reaction to what's taking place. I feel like it's a big
Hmm.
problem with shared communities as well. The Smash community is particularly susceptible because, like, Smash is a party game that's played by people of all ages, so fans of
Yeah.
that game are going to be of any age. Whereas in the past, it was like, if you're an adult, you mostly just hang out with adults. But if you're an adult live streamer, who the fuck knows who you're hanging out with, right? Like, it
So
could be
because of this, would
people
you
of any
say?
age group.
So because of this, would you say that you don't think, I guess, content creators should, sext or fuck their fans?
I think they should be extremely cautious with these engagements. The reason why I say that rather than something super essentialist like they should never is because I do know some content creators who had fans who they ended up developing relationships with over a long period of time, and I think they've formed relationships that are equivalent in value to
Hmm.
what you would expect outside the content creator fan dynamic, because they were handled responsibly and because nobody was being weird and exploitative. Now, there's no way to guarantee from the outside that that's what's going to take place, as opposed to some really weird, like, predatory behavior. So the only thing that I would suggest is that if you're in that position, just be unbelievably fucking careful and, like, real, like, like, I don't know, if you go to a con and if you go to a con, okay, like a like Anime Expo, okay, and you got your soda cup, you know, and you're running to go to a Smash tourney or whatever, and you run into somebody, okay, and the soda cup goes everywhere, and they're like, oh my god, and you look at them and it turns out it's meant to be, and they're like, oh my god, are you Smash player 88? And you're like, yeah, and they're like, oh my god, I'm such a fan. Do you want to, like, go get another soda with me? I don't know. I can't. I just, if love finds a way, love finds a way. But just be careful with it, okay? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I always say that it's like it's generally a bad idea. To me, it's just like the cards are not in your favor in that situation, but there can be other things that can weigh it, you know?
Yeah, like it's like dating a another coworker. You know? Like, there are a lot
Yeah.
of bumps that can happen there. If you're super careful, you can make it work. 99% of the time, there's going to be an issue. But if you can make it work, if you're both very careful and diligent, then, like, okay, I'm not going to find a person who's been dating their coworker for 2 years and then try to, like, beat them both to death because they broke a rule or something. You
So that being said, like has it I think I think you're in a poly relationship right now, right? Am I correct?
Which, it's a open relationship, but it's COVID, so we're
Open.
not doing anything.
Okay. So but does it like make has you like getting a large platform, I guess, and
Mhm.
being a big content creator now, has that made flirting and meeting people like harder or easier by consequence?
It hasn't affected it. I didn't have a problem with any of this beforehand, and once COVID's done, I still won't have a problem with it. So I wasn't, like, waiting hand and foot on the YouTube dividend to pay out in pussy, you know? Um,
Hmm.
so I'll be fine. Um, but I can understand, like, how it could be frustrating for some people to get, like, messages, the kinds that I do, and have to just ignore stuff like that. Unfortunately, that's just one of the trials and tribulations of being a content creator. You know, it's like James Charles. I mentioned this earlier, but James Charles probably gets a lot of flirty DMs from underage guys. I'm sorry, James Charles, but you make $3 quintillion every single day, and you're one of the most well-known makeup figures on Earth. This, just ignoring those messages, it's just gonna have to be that's
It's
that's
one of the
just
prices you pay.
the price of entry, exactly. That's, you're just gonna have
Yeah.
to leave that on the table. I'm sorry, you know, if you want, you could retire and be worth an infinite amount of money and not have to deal with that, you know? Just, that's also an option.
Yeah, that's true. So like how do content creators in general, right? Um how are they supposed to meet people in a responsible way then? Because like they still need to get relationships and sex and all that stuff.
You mean like regular people, or like if it's a fan? Because if it's regular people, you can
Just
go out to
anyone.
outings, and I mean, you can use dating apps, you can go out to outings, you can go to, nobody goes to bars anymore, but if you're a content creator and you're a large content creator, you probably make enough money that you're going to have options to meet people that wouldn't be accessible to a lot of other people. But find things in your area that are like in alignment with your interests, you know? If you're a large content creator, you probably live in a big city. That's probably the case. Just from the way these demographic things trend out. If you live in Los Angeles or whatever, you are surrounded at all times with day after day after day meetups and hangouts and events and niche group activities that are oriented around your interests. For me, for example, they could have anything to do with art, painting, hiking, exercise, miniatures, Warhammer 40K, card games, video games, and hell, you know what? I used to box. I bet if I spent a couple of months getting back into
You
shape,
used
I
to
could.
box?
Yeah, for about 8 years.
Oh, that's crazy.
Could probably get back into that. Probably not going to pick up many chicks at boxing, mind you. Just my experience with the sport. But you know, it's all an option. And if you're a content creator, by the way, you could probably do to go touch some grass anyway. So
Yeah, I was gonna
maybe
say like, but all these things require going outside, you know. So
it's
I would
rough
like some
out there.
alternatives. Asking for a friend.
It's rough out there. Alternatives. I mean, there are always dating apps, right?
Can someone who has like a big online presence just go on a dating app?
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
are they
I
not
only
just gonna
get
get trolled?
Well, it depends on how big you are, right? If you're like Logan Paul, then probably not. No, you're going to get recognized by almost everyone. If you're PewDiePie, then probably not. But at least at 350,000 subs, I'm nowhere near being recognized by like every single in my city. So, you know, that's fine. I do notice though, you can tell who knows me because they super like me on Tinder. That's how I know. I decline every super like because I know it's a fan. Maybe one in a million, it's somebody who just super liked me because they like my beard texture so much. But if not for that, I
Mm-hmm.
know it's because they know who I am, and I know that too because their bios always say they're a socialist. So I always swipe left in those. Sorry, no free convos. I have an email. You can get to me there.
Okay, so are you saying that my viewers have a chance because they're all monarchists, right?
Yeah,
Is
maybe
that
you
it?
have a more ideologically diverse audience. Maybe they can slip one by you.
Okay, good to know. Um, so some people feel like some people have felt that you've often argued that you should be free from criticism because of all the good you've contributed to leftist causes. Like, would you agree that you have that sentiment?
God, no. No, I've never said I should be free from criticism. I've said I should be free from stupid criticism. That's what I've said, which I do
Yeah,
believe,
that's
by the
probably
way.
where it comes from.
Um, no, criticism is good. I learn a lot from the process of being criticized. I'm totally fine with that.
Do you think that should be taken into account? Like, you know, a consequentialist view of like all the things that you've contributed versus the shitty things you've done?
Well,
Or do you think that's like an entitled approach?
that's the thing. I do believe that, but when it comes to like the content that I do and the good I do, I don't think I do like bad. When it comes to the political advocacy, not to say I've made personal mistakes, cancellations, you know, fuck ups notwithstanding. When it comes to the actual stuff that I do in the online sphere, I think that my existence here is almost uniformly good. I think that I have a lot of controversy, but a lot of it really is just people having no
out here
idea
and
what
be
it is
like,
I'm
it all
saying
comes
or
back to
doing.
dialogue.
Oh, click the link there, sorry. But the criticism itself isn't the issue. It's not informed criticism. All you have to do is
Mhm.
search my name on Twitter and you will find people raging at me for things that have nothing to do with me or who I am. Like they're so alien, so completely divorced from any of the things that I believe or advocate for, that to me they unironically they come off as satire. If I saw them in my own subreddit, I would assume it was satire. But it's not. The people are making the jokes unironically.
Yeah, that's true. Um, but how do you separate the legitimate criticism versus the illegitimate criticism? Because I
Uh,
really struggle with that.
I mean, mobs online probably aren't going to give spectacular criticism in general, so you should probably just find a small group of people whose input you trust and rely on them to tell you when you're taking the L or the W. But like broadly, I don't know. I feel like a lot of it kind of hinges on the extent to which you're comfortable in your own process of introspection. Because if you're
Hmm.
not, you're always going to defer to other people's understandings of a given issue. And if you go the opposite direction, you're not introspective and you're unaware of that fact, you're never going to take any criticism at all because all criticisms will come off like bad faith to you, you know? I don't know if there's like a one and done answer to this. I don't know if there's like an easy catch-all solution. All I know is that there is a difference, a meaningful difference between good and bad faith criticism, and that distinguishing between the two is necessary if you want to improve your content.
Yep. I think something it'll just be something I have to learn over time. Has when I'm sure that you were really critical of content creators before, you got successful yourself. So, has the way you criticize like other creators kind of changed now that you know what it's like to be the one that's being criticized?
Yeah, I'm way harder on them. Oh my god, I'm so
Oh,
much harder on them now.
that was not what I expected.
I hate them so much more now. Holy shit. Because the more
Why?
familiar I've gotten with content creation and the more familiar I am with the online space and how people handle these issues, I feel like other content creators don't go nearly far enough in cultivating their in their communities and directing people towards like good ideas. Because man, before I started doing online content creation, I thought the online left was a generally okay place. I had no idea how cucked the online left is. It is so bad. The online left is less effective at pushing for socialism than the online social democrat crowd. Like, it is unbelievable how incompetent and how ignorant the online left is. I genuinely feel sometimes like I'm an oasis in a desert. Like, there are very few other communities that I actually trust to have anything even approximating good ideas on this. And I blame all of it on the content creators because they're the ones who enable and facilitate this. I have gone from liking to hating so many content creators, and they all deserve it, and they'll all get their just dues in time.
So there's not a part of you that starts to get like empathy, at least for, bringing someone down and like knowing what it feels like to have this mob against you?
No, fuck them. These people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars selling bullshit to their audiences. I have no respect for these people. No, whatsoever. Not to mention all the shit that I have to put up with. I am undeniably, inarguably, the most hated person in the online left. In fact, some days, I think that outside of legitimate political figures, if you're only looking at content creators, I might be the most hated political content creator, proportional to their size. I think that's actually a defensible position. If I can handle this, then I think that other people can handle my criticism, okay? But other people, they wilt like flowers when I get angry. That these people freak out when they get meaningful criticism. Because what they want to do, and this is the central, tenet of my criticism. What about Contra? I have surpassed Contra in being hated a long time ago. Guys, you people are way behind the times. The central criticism I have is that a lot of lefty content creators really do seem as though they're just interested in building some social space. They want to build like a cute, tight-knit community with its in-group and its out-group. They want everyone in there to be like friends and like they want their clout. And they don't really care about broader pragmatism. It's just about building that brand. And I hate that. I really do. The conflation of a political space and a social space is just... it's very destructive for the online left.
Is it fair to say that you see yourself kind of as like a political advocate?
Yeah.
Or like an activist?
I'd call myself an advocate, not an activist. But yeah, absolutely. Everything that I do... now, there's no denying that I build my brand as well, but I never build my brand at the expense of a broader understanding on an issue. Every day, I do my best to try to discuss, describe, and present issues to my audience in a way that I think furthers their understanding of complex topics. I never sacrifice that deliberately with the intention of facilitating the growth of some community, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the biggest criticisms that I've heard about you, right, is not to do with any of those controversial moments, but it actually just has to do with your style. But I'm guessing that that's also what's probably made you so successful. So it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like there's been criticism of you having like a condescending style and like the way you debate. And is that like an intentional thing, like on your part?
They call me condescending because they don't like being the one who's wrong in the conversation. It wouldn't matter whether or not I was condescending. These people would still hate it. I mean, what's a non-condescending way to tell a person that they're a fucking idiot and everything they say they understand is completely incorrect? I feel like the problem is that non-condescending disagreement is relegated exclusively to good faith conversation. But if you're having a bad faith conversation with the morons that I deal with in this space, then there's not really any room for me to criticize them outside condescension. For example, like recently, I was arguing with a tanky who seemed to unironically believe that like Marx would have approved of what Stalin did, or that like Marxism uh uh necessarily precludes anti-democratic measures. Now, I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to say here. Do I say you have no fucking idea what you're talking about, but like non-condescendingly? How do I don't know how to do that. People don't come on my stream for like chill conversations most of the time. They come on here because they hate me and they want to own me. And then their communities get angry when they are the ones who end up getting owned instead because unlike them, I'm actually accountable for the stupid shit that I say, so I know it better than they do.
Do you think that that's a part of your appeal, like of being condescending to these people with, as you say, like bad ideas?
I suppose, but I don't know what the alternative would be. How do you not be condescending to people whose ideas are this unformed? It's not like we're having a chill conversation, then I start screaming at people. You can go look through my convos for the most part, and I mean 95% of them. It's usually me being pretty chill and just pressing them on issues and asking questions and challenging their ideas until they start freaking out. And at that point, the fireworks start. But people just get mad at that latter bit because what they really want me to do is roll over and just agree with their perspective.
I guess like the attitude that helps me from being like that is I know for me, like when someone talks in a condescending way and I'm incorrect, I know that I'm less likely to change my mind, right? Because my defenses start getting put up. So like the walls go up and then no idea can penetrate through. But the biggest attitude that's like helped me in general with that is just reminding myself that education is a privilege, right? Having the correct opinion is sometimes a privilege that is only afforded to certain people. And I don't know, I'm guessing you probably disagree with that. Um, but especially like, and that has to do probably because the topics I deal with are often like really complex, like Israel Palestine. So I'm not just going to automatically think someone's dumb or an idiot because they don't know like the intricacies associated with it,
Yeah,
because that
again,
takes time.
it really depends on what a person is talking about here. If a person is
Yeah.
trying to discuss some incredibly niche or nuance or complex issue, I'm not going to fault them for not knowing everything. I mean, I don't know everything about everything, but those aren't the conversations that I tend to have. The conversations I tend to have usually are people having extremely basic misunderstandings about concepts that they could have Googled before talking to me. That's the frustration that I have, you know? Like, I never get to the nuanced arguments. I never get to have the nuanced arguments. The last time I had a really nuanced discussion with another leftist with whom I had disagreements was, oh, come on, guys, you remember her name. Well, they'll remind me in a second. Um, Zoe Baker. Yeah, but what's an Arco Pack? There we go. Yeah, an Arco Pack. Yeah, that was a good conversation. But
Do
beyond
you
that,
notice that your views drop when you have those kinds of nuanced conversations?
yeah, sure. Most of the people who watch me want blood, definitely. Um, but if I had conversations like that every day, then I wouldn't be known as a condescending person. Those people deserve like nuanced discussion. Most of the people who come on just don't. How many genocide deniers or Nazis or people who think that black people's brains are smaller than white people's brains do I have to talk to before there's not before like when is the condescension legitimate essentially, you know?
Yeah. And I do have to say that I don't think you've been condescending or rude at all, like in this talk. So you've been really nice. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
I don't think I've ever been condescending to a person who I wasn't arguing with because I'm not a condescending person. It'd be like calling me a I feel like I don't know. This may be like a dumb example, but I feel like it would be calling a person violent because they're like a drafted soldier or something. They may engage in violence, but it's not because it's in their nature, it's because the situation calls for it. I'm not condescending by nature. A lot of the people that I have on deserve nothing but. So, if as long as we're not with those people, it should be fine.
Well, I've heard you say before that you used to be worse, right? You used to be way more aggressive and that you've kind of like chilled over time. How did that chilling over, like, how did that happen?
Oh, even the people with whom I feel I was too harsh are people who probably don't deserve anything more than my scorn. Like talking with Nazis. The issue is, it's
Mm.
just important rhetorically to set up dunks a little bit better by not being angry to begin with. You never want to give the impression that you're angered by your opponent, because that's what people want. It gives them an excuse to ignore your
Yeah.
position. Very often, debates come down to who is made angrier faster, and that person loses. And if you get angry too quickly, it makes it harder to set up dunks as well. You have to think faster because your brain is muddled. As long as you stay chill early on and properly set up the incoming condescension, the well-deserved condescension, I feel like you come off looking much better. You come off looking really bad if you start off the conversation angry, like I did the first time I talked to Sargon.
Oh, so do you regret how that talk happened?
Oh yeah,
Like
the
you don't
first
feel like
time, sure. But then I learned from that time, and then the second conversation I had with Sargon hurt him so badly that he went ahead and made a video saying he would no longer debate bread tubers because we make money.
that's when you know you've done well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, you learn from the first time, then you go ahead with the second time.
So I think we talked a little bit about this before, but do you think a debate can ever be productive, or do you think entertainment?
Well, I think that entertainment can be productive, much in the same way that
Mhm.
like a fun television series can imbue moral character into the people who watch it. I think that an entertaining debate can still push people in positive directions. For example, even if I have a shouty, screamy debate, let's say we're just talking blood sports debate, nothing real beyond that. And we have that conversation. And there are two benefits people can derive from that. One is that in the process of yelling at this person, I might have said something, procured some piece of information they didn't know, in which case they learned something. And the other possibility is that there are people watching who were on the fence beforehand who got moved over to my side. Now, I don't think the yelly, screamy, shouty blood sports debates are the best for moving people over, but if we're just talking in the purview of entertainment, it could be they were only drawn in because they found my arguments more eloquent, more entertaining. If you bring that
Yeah.
over, I would say that it's fundamentally productive. You've not only enriched your audience, but you've expanded it, and you did so through entertainment. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's like because I'm a history streamer, so I really hate how we teach history in school because so many people think history is boring. When my favorite thing about history are all the stories, like they're the most extraordinary stories, and I wish we taught it in a more like linear form, instead of like, oh, the state happened, then the state, then this. Um, so yeah, totally agree. I wish that more we would combine education with learning a lot more than we do now,
Well, yeah,
especially in
that's why
formal.
nobody pays attention in school, right? Um,
Yeah.
it's so cliche that it's kind of a meme, but like the Kurzgesagt videos, I feel like demonstrate some basic physics or scientific or anthropological concepts better than you could usually get from your average like hour 50 minutes in a high school classroom. And that's of course because, what's that phrase? If I had more time to prepare, I would have given you I would have written a shorter letter. The more time you spend on something, the more opportunity you have to make it concise. But usually the way we present information, whether it's on history or sociology, is incredibly dry. I mean, we could probably work on that.
Okay, so as the head of BreadTube, right? I think do you identify that way? Like the head of
For
BreadTube?
the purposes of this conversation, let's say that I do. I actually hate the
Okay.
term
So
bread too, but we can land with it.
I actually just learned about the term last week. So yeah, I'm brand new to it. Um, but for a long time, like I just did not know what people were talking about. I thought it was like some kind of foodie thing. Um, but what are some common lefty takes that you would say you really disagree with? Like it's things that are just considered standard.
Oh Christ. Oh God.
Yeah, am I about to get you canceled for the second time?
No, no, let's talk about it. All right, let me just organize my thoughts for a second. Okay. The idea that the American electoral system is completely undemocratic or that it cannot be used in any way to enhance our goals is flat right stupid and ahistorical, okay? Marx believed that the American democratic system could be used to peacefully achieve socialism, and that was back before black people could even vote. Nowadays, we do have a more representative system. A lot of lefties completely disregard the extent to which democracy can be exploited in our favor. They completely ignore electoral politics. They have absolutely no care for the way in which elected officials can make our jobs easier or harder. And frankly, they're just generally uneducated in the way the American political system works. They just don't know. It's not even a criticism that I can levy because they don't know enough about the system to criticize it. They just get angry. They just get annoyed by its existence. But that is not a political argument, and it's certainly not being woke or whatever. Additionally, the fact that at any point in time I had to argue with people over whether Trump or Biden was better, the fact that that was even a topic on the tips of the tongues of any leftists online is evidence that this community is fucking dog shit, okay? It is impossible for me to describe the extent to which a second Trump administration could have fucked with the ability for leftists to engage both in electoral and direct action. The attorney Barr was looking for sedition charges against BLM protesters, for God's sake. There were measures being taken to implement, like, nationalistic white supremacist education in our high schools. The idea that Trump's second term would not have made it harder for us to advocate for our interests is just ridiculous. He would have made it significantly harder. If Biden is nothing but a breath of fresh air, if Biden is nothing but a breath of smoky, sewer-choked air, that is preferable to what we were doing with Trump, even in the brief respite that we had. Additionally, hating America is not a political position. Sorry, America is not the root of all evil in the world, okay? Political principles dictate how people interact with each other, and America is not the only country capable of enacting on these systems, okay? The idea that being anti-American is the same as being, like, pro-worker is completely delusional. I swear to God,
really
half...
agree with this one.
Huh?
Really agree with it. I really agree with this one. It's something I do on my stream a lot is I talk about how so many problems, world problems, people blame the United States for. And I will not defend America for everything. I'm not American myself, but a lot of those just are actually like the British's fault. But like
Yeah.
America just takes
Now,
like
it should be
the
noted,
blame.
America does do a lot of bad. It's worthy of criticism. We're not saying don't criticize it, but it doesn't do all bad things. When you say that America does all bad things, you're implicitly suggesting that any opposition to American hegemony must necessarily be good, even if it's being done in a way that's worse to the people it affects. I swear to God, half the online left would have joined up with fucking Nazi Germany when they heard that they opposed American imperialism. You know who did, actually? There were large contingents of the Irish who actually did support Nazi Germany in the early hours of the war because Nazi Germany was posed to destroy England, which Ireland hated. But sorry, this is that is not a good argument, actually, as it turns out, for supporting Nazi Germany. And I feel like a lot. I unironically believe that, though. Like, if we had a modern Nazi Germany thing and, like, declared war in America, that they would side with Nazi Germany. I do actually believe that. Because we're seeing it happen in real time with China. We have the exact same ethno-nationalism. We have the exact same systemic discrimination against ethnic minorities. We have the exact same economic and military imperialism stretching outwards. We have all the basic warning signs of what could be an incredibly powerful and dangerous totalitarian country with an incredibly strict surveillance state spreading out across Southeast Asia. And most lefties won't even hear criticism of it because they think it somehow challenges America to be supportive of the development of America's, like, largest trading partner and another capitalist superpower. You have all of that. Additionally, for Christ's sake, okay, the online left is not your fucking social club. It is not your treehouse. It is not your social space. It is not a pool from which you date, okay? It is a political movement. Even if there is a person who you despise, that does not mean they don't get to be in the left. The only question that should be answered is, are they good for the left? Not, do I like them? And by the way, whether or not they're good for the left is not dictated exclusively by how often and how loudly they repeat all the same 27 virtue-signaling pie-in-the-sky talking points that you express without any intention of actually iterating on them, or actually committing to them or doing anything in the real world. Believe it or not, being on Twitter and saying, we need a revolution now, probably isn't revolutionary. In fact, it's counter-revolutionary. I'm taking the position. It's counter-revolutionary because people right now are not gearing up for revolution in America, okay? But what you do when you set lefties' sights on revolution as the only escape from our system is you keep them from examining or exploring other possibilities. People who do nothing but engage in revolutionary ideation are not people who are going out there looking to maximize their productivity in other ways. They're doomers. They sit there in their apartments, they stockpile ammunition and weed, and they wait for everything to fall apart so they can be really smug about it online. These are not Vanguard Party members, okay? These are not our fucking ticket to the revolution. All you're doing to these people is you're giving them a combined sense of doomsday, like prophecy ideation, and a sense that any participation now is useless because someday the real dice will be rolled when the revolution begins. If you want to win a revolution, by the way, you need far more people than the online left or the left in general in America has now. And you get that by making your social space amicable to the interests of people who disagree with you so you can integrate them, which is the exact same reason why if you go to literally any right-leaning or far-right community, you are not going to see them gatekeeping and kicking out centrists just because they're not far-right enough. Those groups are welcomed because people will grow accustomed to and reflect the political positions of the communities that they are a part of. So if you allow liberals into the left, they will grow more left-leaning. If allowing liberals into the left will not make the left more liberal. If you knew anything about history, if you examined even for a moment of your life anything about the way revolutionary groups formed in the past, you would know this. But the online left doesn't. They don't know anything. They know absolutely nothing. They're just angry and stupid, and they make everything worse for everybody, including themselves. They're depressed. They're drug abusers because they don't know any other way to get their dopamine fix because they think the world's going to collapse around them at any second. They are untrained in any practical or analytical skills necessary for a good revolutionary, and they aren't even familiar enough with their systems, the systems that they live in, to meaningfully criticize them and bring more people off into the left now. They are worthless, and there is no group of people I blame more than the dipshit content creators who enable all of this behavior by profiting with their Patreon bucks and their fucking podcast links off of this sense of doomer, this doomer ideation. They are the ones at fault for this. They have built a brand off neutering the online left. Okay?
What would you say to someone who said, okay, well, Vaush, you're participating in that exact same leftist infighting as you're being so critical over?
I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about leftist infighting. That's not left unity is not my goal because even when I disagree with people in the left, they're still in the left. I don't try to kick them out. I don't try to gatekeep them. I criticize their bad ideas. That's good. Infighting is great as long as you're infighting in a way that leads everyone down the same basic road. And that's what I push for. The infighting they engage in isn't the infighting that I engage in. What I do is I try to make the left better. What they do is they try to make it smaller.
So that was actually great. I hope someone clips that. That was actually amazing. Just to pivot a little, because we're winding down to the end of the interview, but have you heard about the Jake Paul allegations that have come out?
Wasn't it some chick said that he was it rape and then he like tried to force a non-disclosure agreement on her?
Assault, if I remember correctly. Yeah, allegedly.
What am I missing about it?
Well, do you think that this is going to be the thing that finally cancels him? Because it feels like he's just been able to, weed his way out of any other situation.
I don't know much about Jake Paul's history, but as a general rule, I don't think it's possible to really deplatform mega large content creators. Shane Dawson is going to be back soon as well. I mean, for Christ's sakes, I keep bringing this up, but it's still like incredible. James Charles, with all the underage predation that he is engaged in, is probably going to be fine in a year. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's much of a system of accountability. The problem is, I feel like people online hyper overreact to minor problems and underreact to major problems. That seems contradictory, but there's actually a reason for it. It's because there are two different groups of people. The kinds of people who will hold their content creators accountable and the kinds of people who won't. Now, people like Jake Paul, whose audience are mostly made up of like 12-year-olds, are not the types of people who will hold their audience accountable. They really don't care. They probably won't even hear about it, frankly. Because Jake Paul will probably never post a video to his channel directly acknowledging or owning up to it. So they won't even hear about it, and then when they see criticism of Jake Paul online, they'll reflexively defend Jake Paul against it. Those people do not care what anybody does. There are people in my audience who are like that as well. I could go ahead and rob a bank and kill like 6 innocent people and run back home, and they'd be like, listen, okay? First of all, it was a meme. Second of all right, not even that big of a deal. Happens all the time. Third of all, I don't even think it did happen. There are always people who are going to play like hyper defense for their content creator. And on the other side of things, there are the types of people who are fastidiously obsessed with canceling everyone they don't like over the tiniest infractions. And that usually comes from people's anti-fan base. Now, Jake Paul does have a huge anti-fan base, but I don't know if that's where his money is coming from. I don't know if that's where the discourse is going to be centered. Everybody has...
What's an anti-fan base?
I'm sorry?
What's an anti-fan base?
It's what I have. The fans, but opposite. It's what I have more of than I do regular fans. And those people try to fastidiously cancel people over nothing, over anything. Just today, I saw this post where Marianne Williamson said, "There are no words," and posted a picture of a really beautiful bird. And then I replied to it, "It's a bird." And somebody quote tweeted it, saying, "I fucking hate Vaush. We need to get this fucker out of the online left. What a stupid piece of shit." And got thousands of likes. Because I said it's a bird. That's real, by the way. These people will try to take somebody down no matter what they do. So I think we need a healthy balance, okay? We need less anti-fans who will try to religiously cancel anyone and everyone they don't like, but we also need to encourage regular fans to be more critical of the people that they watch, because it's infuriating for people who extol a certain set of values to be fans of a content creator who is a rejection of those values, and they don't care, you know?
Yep. No, that's really, really true.
I spent way too long saying all that. I apologize.
No, it's okay. Honestly, I'm stuck on like you saying that you think Shane Dawson's going to come back. That's kind of crazy.
Oh no! Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. He'll come back. He'll do some big 43-minute video of him tearing up, and he'll say, "I've changed. I'm sorry. I was so lost back then, but I spent some time," and he'll discover something new. It's going to be religion. It's going to be horses. It's going to be hiking. It's going to be something new, and that'll be his ticket back in. And then he's going to come online. He'll get a wave of criticism to begin with. People will quote tweet. People will get tens of thousands of likes. But eventually that'll fade away. And a smaller but still very large portion of his original community is going to go back to watching him. And we'll all be none the wiser. It's going to happen.
Well, if you're just looking back at your career and you think right now, especially like all the stuff, you didn't come from rags, right? But still, like you were someone in someone else's community, right? Like, and we're all that at some point. And now you're like this huge success that people recognize you in. I mean, you said not on the streets, but I guess at least on Twitter and in online platforms.
I've got recognized on the streets a couple of times. It's actually pretty funny.
Oh,
even through the mask.
Is it a good feeling for you or scary?
Oh, it's always fun. I don't mind. What are these fuckers going to do? Attack me? No, it's happened a couple of times, both in California and in Washington. And it's usually when they hear my voice, actually. In fact, recently I was shopping and I was talking with a sales associate, and my voice was recognized by a person who helped work in the animation that plays at the beginning of every one of my YouTube videos. We just happened to be in the same place at the same time. He just heard my voice.
So is there a part of you that's just like, holy shit, this is insane? Like, this is crazy.
Oh yeah, it's wild. I can't wait for COVID to be done, because I imagine there are even more people who would have recognized me if it weren't for the fact that I was wearing my mask. 90% of the time when I'm out, I'm not talking, after all, you know? So we can have even more fun with that, and go around, explore the place, have a good time. And, I'm working out. Anyone comes at me, I'll tackle them. We'll be good.
Yeah, like for me, the moment I had more than like 30 viewers, I was like, what the fuck? This is insane. Because if you just imagine like those 30 people in a room, it's like a lot of people. So I can't even imagine how you feel like with thousands of people who watch you.
Yeah, it's the funniest thing actually is the online friend circle discourse, because Hyena has a friend in Australia, and I talked to that friend once. In fact, I think that friend was actually on stream once. I played Phasmophobia with some people, including him. But he once said that he had mentioned to his friend group that he had played Phasmophobia with Vaush, and apparently all of his friends knew who I was already. And now they're like, oh my god, no way. And it's like, okay, it's on the other side of the planet. I only have 350,000 subs. I mean, we're not talking millions and millions here, but apparently that just happens. It's really, really wild. But I enjoy it. I mean, I love attention, so I'm not going to complain.
Is there something, if you could, I mean, obviously you can't, but is there something that you would tell your pre-famous self as you were just starting to be up and coming, like if you could?
Yeah, come up with a better analogy to demonstrate why child slave labor is bad. I think that'd be probably the big one.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good advice. And just in general, what advice do you have for newer content creators like me, or just anyone else who is hoping to get into this world? Like, not necessarily how to do it, but how to handle it, you know?
Well, it can be really difficult, obviously. I think that this is like such a forehead answer, but I feel like some people do need to learn to log off. I get emails like this sometimes. People will say, oh, I have this little channel, I have this little Twitter account, and we were getting brigaded by Nazis. Like hundreds of them, they're leaving comments. Sometimes people have this weird need to like be present for it. Like it's a train wreck they need to watch. You don't. If you're seriously, if you're a small content creator and you're ever getting like mega brigaded, some really bad shit's happening, or just some drama that you don't want to engage in, just take a day and don't look. Just don't look. It doesn't happen if you don't see it, huh? It's just
Yeah.
chill for a second. A lot of people feel like they have to be present for all the suffering that takes place, but the suffering is what happens when you observe the harassment. It doesn't happen on its own. The harassment unobserved by you doesn't affect you, and thus there is no suffering. So you just need to take a deep breath and not engage with it. Some people, they're so insistent. They have to like reply to everything, block everything. Don't. If that's an issue, just chill for a second. It's not like, oh, you're being cyberbullied, turn it off. It's just take a day, just one day. It can make a huge difference. And also, isn't that kind of like ignoring the problem? No, the problem is observing the problem. That's the problem. That would be like saying that if there's like a fire outside of your house, you have to put your hands into it, because if you don't, you're ignoring the problem, which is you being burned. Well, it is by engaging with the problem that the problem is created. So hands off. So anyway, be careful with that. The other big one that I would say when it comes to dealing with all of this is you have to understand that nobody cares as much about you as you care about you. This is just a good general rule for social anxiety. People freak out when they embarrass themselves, and that usually leads to them doing worse things than they would if they've chilled out. My poor reaction after the sexual harassment drama was because I freaked out. It was because I was embarrassed. I had a need, an urge to downplay everything because I was projecting all of my internal criticism onto everybody else. If you just take a second and reflect on the fact that the criticism that you receive is coming from people who don't think about you in all likelihood as much as you think about you, the love that you receive is also in all likelihood coming from people who don't think about you as much as you think about you. It's all filtered. And if you don't treat it as though it's filtered, if you take it as though it's distilled, you're going to end up very much overemphasizing everything that comes your way. And that's great until it's not. So just don't do it to begin with, and enjoy the online content creation process for what it really is, an opportunity for you to have a cool group of fans who kind of like you and maybe even really like you and are just happy that you're there. That's the best way to think about it.
It's actually really good fucking advice. Maybe if, you ever get bored with this, you should go be a life coach.
Yeah, you
You're
can
like,
Google my name to check my reviews. Get like 87 threads before you actually see the website. I'd have to pay Google quite a bit to get to the top of that ad listing.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, for coming. This is honestly really cool. It was great to get to talk to you, and I appreciate you supporting a tiny creator like me. So, yeah, that's really awesome of you.
Well, shout out your socials, because I'm not the one who's
Oh,
supporting you. They will be.
Yeah, well, I'm Aristocracy, so I'm Aristocracy TV everywhere on Twitter, on Twitch. You should follow me or subscribe to me on Twitch. I stream almost every day. I usually do history content, but twice a week I do these interviews with people I find super interesting, like Vaush. So yeah, you guys should follow me. And I'm also trying to get my YouTube to at least 1,000 subs, in order to get a cool URL and all that stuff.
Yes,
But
that is important.
yeah, it's really annoying. Right now, my URL is like so long.
Yeah,
Drive.
UXDFP674. Yeah,
Why do they do that?
so on. Thank you again.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Vosh. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Peace.